The Revenge of By the Numbers is as always brought to you by esports bet. They are still running their World's Prediction Series 2 competition, which is free to enter via the website. They'll give you some DJT and you can start making predictions and potentially access some of that 10 million USDT prize pool. Now, if you watched the recent episode on this channel of Competitive Edge that I did with Monty, I talked about the Blast group stage coming up for the Blast Fall Finals. And indeed, for their group stage, I actually picked out a cheeky underdog. Maybe if you're playing the World's Prediction Series 2 competition, you might follow my prediction that Big Clan will upset Heroic, a team that was once upon a time one of the best teams in the world. I think in a BO1, it can happen on land. They've got the nice tactics to do it. They can sort of catch the throw from Heroic, and Heroic sometimes starts a little bit slow in competitions.
Chris is not still in the picture. Oh, I'm still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
Gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he can exit. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull as well. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast. Zyro, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. And 5. And oh my God, Zyro! Unbelievable!
Hey up, everybody. Welcome to another episode of By the Numbers. Revenge of By the Numbers. It's got all the names. And, well, we are back in this week going into Blast. There's lots of news to talk about. There's a bit of the drama picking up as well. But before we get into all of that, I want to thank everybody, in particular those who have been actually pushing the podcast form of the show, because that's been showing up on Spotify. We're on Spotify or on iTunes. We've been obviously putting the show out on YouTube. Thanks to everybody supporting there. But if you happen to be listening on Spotify or iTunes, be sure to drop a review on there, because that helps a lot in terms of getting out there, getting the word out there, and the algorithm, the almighty algorithm god, all hail the algorithm. So even if you just leave like a one-word comment, just leave a comment, leave a review, anything like that, it helps, promote the show. So big shout out to everybody who's been tuning in there. That's awesome. And well, it's time for another week. So Thorin, how you doing, my dude? Have you had a good few days? Nice weekend?
In general, all right, yeah. I'm sort of getting back into my groove on some work stuff, so you'll see some forthcoming stuff soon enough. Might even be some I don't ever give spoilers if people know how I do it. But put it this way, I've got at least one piece of content I might be dropping soon that might blow some people's minds. We'll see. All I'll say is this: it's more blow your mind in this sense, Samlet. It's one of those ones where if you ask like haters, what about that? They be like, that never happened, and you'll just see when it drops that as usual. I do what I want. This is my world, and y'all are just fucking observers. So enjoy the show.
I mean, basically, now we're going to get into the thick of it. I'm really,
Yes.
yeah, we're live in it. We're in. Okay, good. Just making sure that everything's up and running. Everything is good. Just happy to see. Cool. Yeah, dude. I mean, all right. Already right off the bat. I guess we can just get right into petty grievances, because there's already a topic that I was wondering about kicking around, and you just straight up right when we got on the call, you're like, we need to talk about this. So
yes.
Fair enough. I want to get your take on this Obo situation, because it seems really weird. It just seems really weird. So already you said that you had an opinion on it. And I want to hear it.
Basically, this is an example. Like most of the petty grievances are exactly as the name suggests. It's just something petty, that something's happened to us or you or Richard, and we're just addressing it, and or using it as a platform to get back at people or to correct the lies and fabrications. But this is actually one where I think I've got like a fucking righteous message me. It reminds me of when I was doing Blast and I was doing the message segment where I tried to sort of like be almost like a fucking father figure to these fucking pro players, right? People are going to naively think, Sembler, because I imagine all the other podcasts will probably do this, that we're now going to join the TMZ circus and now comment on like Obo's life, like what's he tweeting, like what does this tweet mean, speculate, like this could be from this, or it could be to do with that, or maybe what in the background, and but if I zoom in, like we're not going to do any of that. Here's what I'm going to address. It's the response to the Obo situation, right? Here's the thing. I totally understand why initially when Obo, a guy who a few years ago was a professional player for Complexity, but then he obviously famously said he needed to go back to NA because he was having to live in Europe for too long. It was having some sort of a toll on him. At the time, people thought maybe he'll join another team. He never did, basically, and he sort of disappeared. And then recently, a couple of times, he briefly would come back, come on social media, say some stuff, then go away again. And basically, people already were thinking, like, is there something a bit weird going on here? Because, for example, when he would come back, he would do stuff like retweet old clips from 2020 when he was doing some good highlights or something. You'd be like, okay, does that mean you're coming back? So I can see why initially, first of all, the potential that he'd come back as a player is an interesting storyline. But then more importantly, when some of these tweets started to look a little bit Like the careful way to phrase it would probably just be a bit disturbing or a bit alarming or maybe a bit out of character, or I would even say suggesting something like maybe the person is undergoing some sort of mental duress. Maybe they're having a hard time in some way.
You see the pictures. Like I missed it when it was happening, but the people in my Discord, they like the guys, they put together like the collage of the pictures that ended up getting taken down. But I mean, you take a look at those pictures, it's like this is not somebody who's doing well right now. Safe to say, it's definitely, it's a really weird thing. But this whole, like, it's been like this for a while though. Like you say. Yeah. Every time something happens with Obo, it just turns into like front page Reddit news. There's a thread, there's speculation, everybody's getting in on it. What's happening to this guy? And it's like, I don't know, man. As soon as he deleted his social media, I was like, good. Actually, like I was like, okay, he's just gonna cut ties. Maybe he's going back to school. Maybe something's like that.
Here's my problem, though, dude. My problem is basically this. I get initially when nothing's happened and you just see the person making a bunch of different statements, why people would rally around the sentiment. Is there anyone out there who knows this guy? Can someone contact him? Can someone contact his family? Right. Let's get Jason Lake involved. Let's get the complexity players involved. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Now, as an impulse and an initial move, that makes sense. My problem is this, Semler. The problem is when Jason Lake, when Obo's family, when people like you've played with him try to get involved, it's not going to be resolved instantly. This isn't a movie. You don't skip scenes and suddenly it's another day and you find out how it's resolved. So because nothing's happened yet, this is where I think it's totally inappropriate. Because here's the problem, Semler. It's fine if people were like, separately, that's a bit disturbing, wonder what's going on, or they're messaging people, get in contact with him. It's the fact that so many people, Semler, seem to be following this like some sort of fucked up Netflix drama, that they're like, oh, I'm on episode 3, oh, I wonder if it's going to be season 2. Like, that's already fucked up, because they're almost like, you can see there is sort of that TMZ like fucked up element where they don't quite know it's a real person's life, you know what I mean? They're almost commenting like this is a character from a show, and as a result I've even seen some mad inappropriate comments. But then even worse than that, they're also en masse. You can go to his Twitter. People are replying to him. Now, this is totally out of bounds. And here's why. Because who the fuck are you? Just some fan of Counter-Strike. So because you're a fan of Counter-Strike, you're going to go and say, oh, here's a person who appears to be in some sort of distress, maybe even could be a risk to harm themselves. I'll just try to contact them and send a message from my brain into their brain. That's a responsible act. I'll probably save their life. What a fucking insane premise to even have. Who are you? You're just some guy. What, have you seen a TV show or a movie where someone talks them off a ledge? Yeah, that isn't you. You're not going to be the one who does that. What you don't know is this, and I'm being very serious right now. Every word you send to that person directly could be the trigger to make them do something that you cannot possibly predict, because you don't know them. You don't know their life. You don't know their current mental state. You don't know what they're thinking in their mind. So even, by the way, and this is a really serious point to make, even seemingly positive, like messages of support, get help, bro, like stop tweeting, or like what's going on in the background, like don't harm yourself. You don't know. Even those could trigger the person. You cannot possibly know. This is such a fragile situation, potentially. You don't want to be the guy, by the way, where you were the last person in the chain of cause and effect that did something and then he did something as a result of it. You want to be the person sitting back going, I hope this person gets help, or what's that, Jason Lake and Cooper have said, they're in contact with people that know them, right, help is on the way. Let's all actually sit back, give this guy as little attention as possible, because this could also be tied to parasocial aspects and himself thinking, well, I could be someone on the internet, but I'm not here. Who knows, right? So as a result, just sit back and let it resolve itself. Let's not keep prodding this person. Let's not mock this person. Let's not tell this person things like, log off, bro, just log off Twitch grass, bro. You don't know what that could fucking do to someone's mental state. I can tell you, as someone who I don't consider to be a person who's in mental distress, etc., if you get thousands of people message you, even if a lot of the messages are positive, you never know which way that can hit you, because at that point in time you're just being hit by all these triggers and all these different things are going on. There's things you don't even know in your mind are getting activated, traumas and baggages and all sorts of shit. And then finally, the other aspect is this. Within this, there's also the angle that makes me sick, which is, I get why someone like Config would publicly say, he was a teammate of this guy, he probably lived with this guy, was in hotel rooms with him. I get why he would make an earnest message and be like, just contact me, mate, like anytime, like I'll come out of practice, everything. That's great. But here's the problem. That also, I get the vibe, is what some other people in the scene who don't know this Obo guy are doing. And they are, I'm not exaggerating, they are farming this guy's fucking tragedy and mental condition for their own likes, to be like, look, this is a good guy too. So the one I'm going to call out's an obvious one. Because by the way, he, within the last few months, said, I am a piece of shit and he will reveal it. So you know what? He's on the fucking docket for everything he does for the rest of his career. So Simple, the greatest CSGO player in the world, decided he'd insert himself into the story. And the way he has done it is so fucking irresponsible. I feel like he's made no progress as a human. I feel like I'm just talking about Simple in 2017 or 2015 or 2014. The guy who cheated, the guy who stole the knives, the guy who said ridiculous things about Germans burning in hell or see you in hell or whatever. Like that, I feel like I'm talking about that guy now, not the guy who cheered Australis when they beat him in 2018, not the guy who won the awards, who said that great fucking message at Katowice about the conflict and about the fact that he played with Russians and played with Ukrainians. It was more important to overcome it and peace is important. I don't feel like that guy's made it anymore, mate. I feel like something dark's happened to this fucking guy because his set of responses to Obo are so inappropriate. Basically, first of all, he just replies to him with a bunch of like crazed fucking emojis, like the crying laughing emoji, like just laughing emoji, a bunch of those. And then when people sort of are trying to say like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? It's like inappropriate. He basically suggests, like, let me check exactly what his phrasing was. He says,
but I understand how to talk with hashtag with air quotes crazy people like me, so please.
Right, first of all, you don't know. You are not some sort of expert clinical psychologist. You haven't spent years working in an outpatient unit. You haven't even known people in your life beyond people like your friends and family who perhaps even have had this situation. And the idea, by the way, that you, a dickhead who steals knives and cheats on the internet and can't get along with someone who holds B slightly worse than you on Mirage, that makes you, air quotes, crazy. And now you know what this guy's life's like. Motherfucker, what are you talking about? You don't. And also, like I said in the tweet, how inappropriate, mate. This is like some sort of fucked up dark meme where someone's like, help, is there a doctor in the house? And you're like, well, I have been voted Counter-Strike Player of the Year twice in a row, so excuse me, ladies, can you clear the room? I need space to work. What the fuck are you gonna do? All you're good at is shooting people in a fucking video game, but in real life you think you're fucking Jesus coming down to the lepers, bringing them up with your power. Are you your fucking mind? Wind your fucking neck in, you twat. Tell you what, aren't you on your little break right now? Wasn't this that much promised break of maybe if they, by the way, spoiler, it was just, I'll just be real up with you. He thought Na'Vi might tank after Boomich, and if it tanked, he was just going to be a little bitch and take his ball and go home for the summer. And that way he wouldn't have had to lose to Cologne and all the rest of it. He wouldn't have been there, would he? And then you'd all go, but when he comes back, Simple beat Fizz. It's not even real. So spoiler, you've heard the news. Maybe he's going to be missing Blast. Maybe he's off doing some sorts of shit. But it's nice to know he can still come down from Mount Olympus to just fuck with the mortals' lives like this. Apparently in this case, just for some sort of mad, like the joke here is it's like he really is just like, oh, there's some Twitter drama going on. Well, I'm Simple, so I'm going to insert myself. Like, why would you? Why would you, mate? And also, this isn't normal Twitter drama. It's one thing if this is just banter, people saying things about players in Counter-Strike, people going back and forwards with beef. This is a scenario that, quite frankly, in my opinion, has nothing to do with Counter-Strike. It's about a real man and his mental health and what the condition of his life is right now. So that's not a time for frivolity, for jokes about that. And it's definitely, like I say, you know what I said earlier about how you've got to be really careful what you say? Imagine saying directly to the person that they're crazy. Are you fucking kidding me? That would be like top of the Family Feud, like things you do not say to someone who might be in a distressed mental situation. Haha, bro, I am crazy like you. Haha, crazy. And then all emojis like, the joke is that you're trying to reverse engineer a scenario where something horrible happens to this person. That's what it looks like. I know it isn't the case, I'll give you that much, but fucking hell. Like in general, that's like I say, what I hate about this whole thing is it just feels like a lot of people were bored. And then like I say, to them, it's like a new Netflix drama just dropped. And they're like, I can't wait to get into this. Like in Woodstock 99, it was all a failure. And that, like, no, this isn't a documentary. It's of a guy's life. It's a guy's life, guys. Come on, give me your thoughts.
That's pretty much it. It's like kind of like, hey, it's been a slow news week. This is the thing. Like you're kind of like going on Reddit. There isn't much, just a couple clips here and there, you know. And then all of a sudden, there's just like, oh, a little bit of Obo news there. They're in here like, oh, give me that sweet drama. Give me that. What is it? Give it to me. And like they just get involved, and then this is where again, it's not well, I don't know. You know, it's like if I see something like that happens publicly, if it happens in a public tweet where you're reaching out to somebody or you're messaging somebody and you do it publicly in a public tweet, to me, that's just like, it's a front facing, it's a clout.
You wanted people to see it publicly. You could have DM'd the guy. Yeah, you could DM him.
Like second guess your motives every time because I'm always just like, well, or you could DM him and then it's private, right? And if it's serious, usually you're going to DM somebody and it's private sort of thing. And, you know, Config never had beef with him, never had a problem. But, you know, it's just like if he's going to send 10 messages to Obo publicly and they're all getting thousands of likes and all that, I'm just like, Or just DM him, like just send him a DM. You have his text message, like you have his phone number. Just WhatsApp him, like why is anybody doing anything on public Twitter at this point? It's like you see something like that happen. It's like if you know the person well enough, you're gonna have their phone number. At that point, you're sending him a text, you're giving him a call. You're not making some, you're not making some tweet for everybody to see. So again, this just feels like this is this weird bend that we're taking where it was a slow news week. There wasn't much drama going on. It was just a bunch of clips on Reddit, and all of a sudden this Obo thing pops up and everybody's just like, sweet, here's my fix, give it to me straight in. And yeah, it's not pretty to see, man. It's really not. It's like a very weird sort of situation sometimes you find yourselves in online where it's just people are just making these kind of comments online, and the only reason that I can see it, and maybe it's just I'm too cynical or jaded or whatever now, but like whenever I see stuff done publicly like that, I'm like, I start questioning. I'm always like questioning the motives, which is a real thing.
Yeah,
it's a shame. It's a shame that it's like.
I mean, think about this, similar. It's not like you're being overly cynical, though. You're in an esports industry, which the last like 3 or 4 years of this show, all the petty grievances are about how it's just about optics. People don't really have anything below the surface. They just care what people think and how they appear and how they are perceived. And so I agree with you. There is some of that. Like, here's the thing: a couple of people, like I say, in my opinion, the Cooper guy, Jason Lake, Config. The reason why them doing maybe a post publicly is good because it might quell other people trying to contact him. Like, right, someone who knows him. It's got in contact. But as I say, when you're doing it too much, and especially in certain cases, like the simple ones, like just don't even get involved, mate. What the fuck are you doing? Do you see me just jumping in there messaging the guy? Of course not. And the difference is, mate, unlike you, I actually could do with some fucking delicate work there. But the point is, I wouldn't claim to know this person. I don't know what their situation is. I have no idea what even these photos mean. Quite frankly, I think it's mildly inappropriate to speculate, but that depends on the thought. If you're doing it in a private forum or whatever, or like not whether directly to him, whatever, I guess it's just the nature of the world. But I found the whole thing just like, what's mad is even though everyone was sort of rushing someone to show how compassionate they are, I actually found sort of the lack of basic human compassion the disturbing part about this story. Because as I say, I don't feel like people are engaging with this like it's a real human on the other end of the computer.
No, that's the thing. It really feels very off-putting because the whole thing is, man, it's not often. Everything is so curated online. I think that's also the thing, where this gets a lot of attention. Is because
I've almost never seen, by the way. Dude,
exactly.
I want to ask this. I've almost never seen it happen. Because you know what? This has happened, but it's always behind the scenes normally. You know what I mean? It's very rare ever leaks out in the public. There's people have had meltdowns and all sorts of things, and people have actually killed themselves, sadly. But usually that's all done privately,
Yes, that's the thing where it's a that may add to the interest for people because they're just like they get, everybody craves the real now, because everything is so curated online, everything is so fake, and like you say, it's just about optics and surface level bullshit that when something, maybe without even realizing it, when something real comes along, they're just attracted to it like a moth to a flame. They can't turn away. And sometimes it is going to be something like this where you're just like, it does seem like he needs a hand, but again, you need to be asking yourself that question, like, are you the person to give that hand, like you've been pointing out, or is it reach out to family, reach out to friends, Jason Lake, people who have worked with him in the past, people who have his number, it's like those are the people who should be getting in touch. You shouldn't be doing anything online. It's just a really weird thing, and then it feels like you're kind of piling in to hope you get your moment in the spotlight as well. I don't know. It mystifies me. It's really a bizarre thing. Well, okay. I mean, we don't want to take up too much of the show with this. Just give some thoughts on that.
Yeah.
I mean, there is that news. Speaking of Simple, there is that news that he is extending his break. I mean, I don't know if he's like where he is, but the last time I saw Simple was like on Instagram stories partying it up in Dubai with Morgenstern and Boomich. Like recording music and like popping champagne and just doing crazy shit. So I was like, I don't know if he's still in Dubai partying or whatever, but it sounds like he's not going to actually make the first week of Blast, and that they've had to bring in a stand-in for him. So I don't know. It seems really weird because it sounded like going into this break, Simple was just like, yeah, it's all going to get resolved in the break. This is great. We're going to have like 2-3 weeks off. I'm going to get everything squared away and we'll be back. And then that's just not happening here. By the end of the break, it seems like he's going to actually have an extension, and these Blast groups might get completely screwed up if Na'Vi, who are the other top dog that can actually challenge FaZe, they're not going to have their star player.
I mean, the thing I find cringe about it is this. Like, a little while ago when Boomich was going to get replaced, famously, there's a stream clip where Simple says in, like, Russian, like, we all told him, like, he didn't listen to any of it, basically, like, referring to the woman, obviously, he made his wife who wrecked him, etc. He just sort of says all that. Like, first of all I would say is, in light of what happened today, who the fuck would take your advice, mate? You can't even handle being yourself. How are you going to give someone else advice that would be themselves? Like, you're a fucking idiot. And then, yeah, on this angle, that's what looks really whack. Because here's the problem with this topic, Sebla. It's a really tricky one, actually, because it reminds me of the topic that happened in a long time ago in League of Legends, right? So what happened is years and years ago in League of Legends, it was 2014, a long time at the time, League of Legends TSM player, Xpecial, got benched and eventually kicked from TSM when he was actually one of the best like LCS supports, because basically when he wasn't like scrimming League of Legends and streaming League of Legends, he was playing other video games, like, I don't know, I'm going to guess like whatever, like Diablo or Street Fighter or something. And basically Reginald said at the time, like, you're not allowed to play other games because you have to be dedicated to League of Legends. And at the time, right, the reason, this is why I give this example, the reason it's a tricky topic is that he's both right and wrong. They're both right and wrong in this sense, right? Which is, if it's true that I'm not spending enough time on League of Legends and I'm doing other things, then you are totally within your rights as my boss to be like, why don't you spend more time on League of Legends? But the problem is, if I've spent absolutely as much time as you require in League of Legends, and basically the rest of my time is just my free time, then why does it matter if I'm playing Diablo or watching a movie or going to the roller rink? Like, it's the same thing. I'm just using my free time, right? So on that note, right, I have a similar thought about this, which goes like this. If Simple's actually taking time off, because it was alluded to the idea, like I said earlier, if you ignore the competitive angle, I said maybe he was going to take time off because he was burned out after the year, and obviously no one knew what would happen with the Ukraine conflict. And, you know, there was a bunch of reasons why Simple might have taken time off. He claimed it's because he was living out of the suitcase and needed a break or whatever. I mean, the joke is it looked like he's having a midlife crisis by that fucking middle parting, doesn't it? Like, exactly. Someone with that haircut is going to give other people advice about life. Maybe not. This is a fucking fire haircut, mate. I've even got a better Zoomer haircut than you, Simple, and that's no cap. For real, motherfucker. So, okay, here's what... That's going to be in best of bad numbers if we start doing it again. Right, here's what I would say is this, though. If he really is just taking a break, like he actually needs time off, then it's not like it would be inappropriate to just go to another country, take a holiday, have some time off, forget everything. In this case, party with someone who used to be in esports, boom, he might be still, and whoever that fucking rapper guy is. You know, that's how you let your hair down, sure. On the other hand, though, obviously, people are going to wonder, including Navi fans, like, if you don't go to this blast, and God forbid they don't get out the groups or something, they're going to be wondering, like, isn't our best player off partying in Dubai? Like, you're going to have to battle that. That's the dichotomy of being a pro, unfortunately. So I'm not sure which way to come down on it, but essentially the problem is we have to know whether Simple's full of shit or not in this case, and that's actually very hard to figure out, I think. Because even this news came out of nowhere, didn't it? Like, it was only like a few days ago. It was like he might not even be at Blast, which is weird to me, mate, because dude, Blast is the last one they won. That's the only thing you won this year, motherfucker. And then secondly, there's not that many tournaments left this year, guys. There's like, 3 tournaments until the major, including the major. And then after the major, I guess there's going to be 1 or 2. And that's just the end of the year. So like in the modern circuit, this isn't like 5 years ago. You don't play like 18 LANs in a year. You might play 10. So actually, this could be a big deal if he ends up missing this particular blast.
It's a question, like, is he going to miss all of it? Because the way the Blast have got it set up now is that they're groups. I mean, the first
play the best of 3s, yeah.
You do have quite a few safety nets involved, so maybe
you can't get eliminated there. Even if you come 4th, you still drop down to one of those best of 3 matches.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's a bit of wiggle room there, but I mean, you and I, we kind of agree on that point in that. Fine, fair enough. You get time off. Everybody wants time off. But if you're on a team and you need additional time off, it's like, and your team doesn't do well, what's going on? Like, how is it that your teammates are not going to resent you? If it is, but then again, we don't necessarily know. All we're going off of is like, this is just the thing that, I'm scrolling on Instagram. I'm in the stories and then I see, it's like, all of a sudden it's just stories of like Boomich and Simple and Morgenstern and all those guys like popping champagne in some hotel in Dubai. And I'm like, oh, okay, he's having a good time. But then the next day you wake up and you're like, wait, hold on, he's not actually going to be at Blast and he needs an extra break. And the last footage I saw was him partying in Dubai. I mean, you're just connecting the dots. It's not like he's at home somewhere, he's doing something else. It's just that if that's the last thing you have to go off of, I mean, you better hope that your team pulls through. And I hope that there's no bad blood with the teammates, because I don't know, like personally, it would be a bit of a weird situation. I guess on Navi, nobody can really say a word, because it is Simple, and Simple is just so, him and his family are so intertwined in that team that there really is no touching him. He is untouchable on that team.
So you better watch out. He's crazy, man.
Yeah, also he's crazy, exactly. So
all I'll say is this: when I hear this whole story, and most Simple stories nowadays, I just think of the lyrics from the unreleased Kanye track, Straight Fire track, look it up, Alien, which goes, "Beam me up, I'm about to sign off. Dumber now, need time off. Dumber now, I don't believe the time." There we go. I think that's very much the great poet laureate of our age, Kanye West. There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Isn't he? It's not Kanye West anymore, though, right? It's Ye.
Exactly, yeah. And some would even say you can't fuck with Ye. So People don't know how much of the E-League agreement was just me saying shit like that just over and over again.
Dude, I mean, I still to this day, the Jurassic Park thing.
Oh, no, that was... What I loved about that, if people don't know, was I just love any scenario which the sponsor themselves are like getting in contact, like, can you please have them not mock the theme tune of our franchise movie that we're sponsoring the event with? And then when they would tell us, because it's like 2015, we also would just be like, oh, go on then, I guess if you're going to fucking ruin the mood or whatever, like, even though we had just paid to do like video games, like, but we were making like they were harsh and our buzz, like, nah. God, yes, they bloody called you up on the little Minions Jurassic Park or whatever. I know, it's mental, isn't it?
I know, dude. Actually, like, real quick, I guess it's not. We're today, guys. In case you're wondering, we're going to be talking about like some of the blast groups. There's also some XS did an interesting interview that I wanted to cover with you a little bit, real quick, and wonder if you think he has a gun to his head or not, just because of talking. Like the headline is that Nico has no say in terms of roster, blah blah. So I want to get your take on that real quick.
But, joke for you, ready? But we'll go into it for real. But obviously, the initial premise, like you said, is Extaz came out, and this is the quote. Extaz said, "I've never seen Nico looking to call the shots, nor have I ever seen him contradict the vision of his IGL. That's amazing. A tier 1 coach admits he was never in a practice." That's almost like there's the joke. Whatever, it's a joke. We'll go back to that later. But yeah, that's the free gag to start with. Go on. What topic are we doing first here? No, pretty good. It's pretty good because technically, by the way, the joke is that does look like it was written by a lawyer, so they could get away with that plausible next. It's like, I've never seen Nico do that. He probably walks in the practice and goes, "Whatever's happening now, I hope it's over in a minute when I uncover my eyes."
That really is the end of it. I mean, dude, Yanko comes out as well in the discussion. Okay, hold on. Before we get into that, I just wanted to point out really quickly that, last show we talked about how it was turning into a bit of a mixed league already, the ESL Impact League. And as I'm watching this, Anders Bloom just retweeted EGCSGO announcing their new roster, where it's 3 girls and 2 trans women who are competing on this new team for ESL Impact. And I was like, man, that didn't take long. Not only did they do 1, they did 2. EG really has to lean into it hard. That's the new vision for that brand, is to just go really hard on that side of things. And they haven't held back. They didn't waste any time. So already EG just getting in the mix. Fair enough.
The stupidest part about that is because the premise of the league was that men are toxic and create an environment that means women can't play competitively. By your own logic, this could actually, I'm not saying it, I'm saying it's a hypothetical. This could have been a man who did that, who now identifies as a woman and plays in the league. How does that make any sense? That's why that premise was so stupid if you don't get it. That premise was never real, by the way. That wasn't the real reason they made this league. They made this league so that women could have a league to compete in. They made this league because they wanted to have more prize money. They made this league so that they could actually use a bunch of political sentiment to make investments that allowed them to play a tournament. By the way, as we pointed out a million times, being as we know that the money is essentially just created for this purpose, that's not even a big deal. It's just more tournaments, great. But the point is, we don't have to like it. You don't have to go, "Oh, it's awesome." And by the way, that's even something I think stupid as fuck anyway. Have you noticed now they've created an anti-criticism fucking environment around this league? So even if you yourself were a woman, like my friend Foxy that I talked about with the Skiller Project on the past episodes, even if you're someone like her, coming along going, "Well, I put half of my entire adult life into doing women's tournaments." If you critique this league, the logic is a fucking woman who doesn't even know esports is going to go, "So you hate women?" We're not even having discussions. You're just blocking the discussions. That's just obnoxious.
The tricky part is to watch people do that 180, where it's like just a couple of years ago, they thought one way, and they've just managed to, I don't know, maybe it's because you're in that environment constantly and you have to make constant concessions to be able to continue existing in that environment. So if you want to keep your job, you have to start, changing how you see the world. But watching Sapphire change from like literally saying that she came up not caring about gender at all and just wanting to compete with the best and wanting to go hard, to like now just cheering this on the entire way, like clap, yes, good. And everybody else, it's like we said, 20 people in a fucking podcast, and they all just nod along and say, "Yes, can we move on to a next topic?" It's like, let's not talk about this anymore. Actually, we talked about it for about 5 minutes now. Let's move on to the next topic. It's like, okay, great. Yeah, definitely everybody's on board.
By the way, another thing this brings up Because if people don't know, this has already happened. I think it actually even happened in ESL's league. If you remember a few years ago, I think something happened off the top of my head. Like, wasn't there a scenario similar a few years back where a bunch of men intentionally trolled like an ESL league and pretended to be women and they got like kicked out or something? And back then they used to use some sort of system, which I'm going to get to now, where the problem is, because obviously, yes, in the past there were famous pros that did this and played in tournaments. I'm not talking about that. I'm all about the entered explicitly a female league, right? When they did this, at the time, the controversy was this. How do you prove that it's someone in good faith doing it? Like, how do you prove that the person actually does identify as trans as a woman? Or how do you not know that it's someone like, the extreme example would be like the Zubby guy on Twitter who said, I now identify as a woman, broke the world record for like the weightlifting, but then afterwards said, now I am a man again, so that he could troll the fact that in theory someone could do it. Now, here's the problem, right? Everyone always does this, Samler. Because it's a really awkward question, because it's open-ended and there's no answer to it, everyone loves to just go, you're just intentionally picking the most extreme stuff. You're making light of this. No, what I'm showing you is there's an obvious flaw here that could be, and by the way, if there's enough money and attention, will be exploited one day. That's just an obvious. If you know how incentives work for humans, someone will abuse this particular loophole. So the question I have is this, just like that ESL league, I think you are opening a can of worms that is only going to destroy you as ESL. And here's why. Because what happens when the person trolls and then doubles down and goes, I am this though. Now, do you A, kick out a trans person from your league? Spoiler, the activists will eat you alive. Or do you ask for some sort of proof? By the way, you see already the way you go in. First of all, what proof could there be for something that fundamentally is something the person believes in their mind? You can't enter their mind. You can't corroborate that. We're just basically taking it at face value because we're assuming most people, I would assume so as well, aren't going to lie about it and they understand it's a serious topic. But the problem is, just having a photo of them isn't enough because that's the dumbest thing of all, Samuel. The reason I brought up this case from a few years ago is because one of the things they wanted to do was see like a photo of you or whatever. Now, the reason why that doesn't make any sense whatsoever is it's actually... If you know enough, me and you have looked into this, other people haven't. If you know enough about that particular worldview and that paradigm of the world, there are absolutely people who say, I identify as a woman, but I'm not going to physically change my appearance or in any way alter myself to be a woman. I'm going to continue with the body I was born in, but I identify as a woman. Now, that person, by the way, within their movement, that's an entirely valid point. In fact, by the way, I disagree with certain fundamental elements of the worldview, but if you accept those initial premises, I can't see why they would be excluded. Like, surely they can just say that's what they perceive too. So I think this entire thing, I don't see how it helps women. I don't even, in fact, the joke is, this is almost like, without saying the name of it, that famous meme comic, it's like, women? That's like the ESL, except women. Who's trying to help women? Like, the joke is that's like the fucking meme. And then also, I actually think in this particular certain scenario, there's just gonna be tons of drama in the future. And also, the last thing I'll say is this: if you think this makes sense for these people to compete with all the women, then fundamentally you do not agree with the mantra that they all say, Samlo, which goes like this: there's nothing in video games stopping women competing on an even ground with men. Well, in that case, why would it even be a problem for them to just compete in whatever scenario they competed in the past? Surely, remember, this isn't wrestling by your logic. I'm not saying that. I actually disagree with that fundamental premise too. I don't know if there's differences in video games. I would suggest there are. I've seen enough years of competition to suspect as much, yeah. But if they say there isn't, this somewhat goes against it, because then why would that person need to compete elsewhere? Well, here's the sad news, guys, and I intentionally set it up so that this will be the final point, because you're going to think this is a throwaway point, and this is the entire point. Do you know the real reason why these trans women have to be able to compete with the women? To go right back to the initial impetus for the entire league, Semler. Men are toxic pieces of shit, and anyone who isn't a man is instantly marginalized and is abused and treated like shit on the internet. So we have to create a safe space for them. And in fact, you might have even seen they did actually say some of that when they made this league. They also claimed it would be for marginalized communities like non-binary. And so as a result, this was always what the entire thing was anyway. It was all that initial premise. So it doesn't surprise me. That's one thing I would say. I don't see how in any way this helps like the scenario of the plight of women's. I'd even argue in this particular case, now you're getting into all this murky territory where it's like, in some ways, doesn't that deny women spots in the, you can get into that whole thing as well.
Actually exactly where it goes. It's the same thing in college sports in the States right now, where it's like all of a sudden you have what, are you going to lose college, what is it? College tuitions, college, scholarships. Yeah, you're going to lose scholarships for girls who have competed their entire lives, trained their entire lives to get that college scholarship, and then all of a sudden they're going to be pushed out because now they're getting third in a race instead of second or first where they would have been before. So yeah, no, there's that question as well. It's in terms of performance. I mean, I did hear that argument where it's just like, well, none of them are like, none of them are. It's like, well, the women are still getting the MVPs in the tournaments though, and it's like, well, it's just a matter of time though.
What a weird thing that's just all I'm saying is it's so far. Like
so far,
you know what I mean? How does that answer it? You know what?
Also, I thought they were all women. I mean, dude, this is where it just gets all weird.
By the way, people think, Samuel, no, that's a serious point to make. People will think you're being frivolous when you say that. That is exactly what these discussions are like. People come into a discussion and go, right, hey, everyone in this discussion, including people who've been alive decades longer than me, loads more industry experience, I'm going to define the words you're allowed to use. But at any moment, I reserve the right with the get out of jail free card to come in and destroy my own definition. So even though I'll say trans women are women, by the way, spoiler, if you say that sentence, every time you then say women in the rest of the sentence, you've just included all of them. So why would you ever then say trans woman again? In fact, why did you call them a trans woman in the first place? By your own logic, algebra, women are women, and they are women, therefore women are women are women, so they're all women, in which case, why would you say the women win the MVPs? The joke is, you're actually making a cynical concession to Samuel's point there, to try and win him over in some sort of fucked up way, even though you know he doesn't agree with you, and you don't agree with him. Like, again, these aren't real conversations, guys. That's why what makes those convos boring to me is I can tell 5 minutes in, I'm not actually having a discussion abstractly about these principles. I'm just talking to someone who wants to beat me with their points and then B, get me to concede. And that's not interesting to me, We can have all sorts of great convos about it, but as you can see, these convos just shut it down, the things they're saying, mate.
That's exactly it. Well, okay, I didn't want to take too much time.
No, it's all right. It was an interesting topic.
But it is an interesting topic. I mean, it really is, and it's important as well. And there's a documentary out there right now, What is a Woman, that's worth checking out in case you're interested in the topic as well. Banger job on that one. So worth a check. All right,
it's the question of our age.
In many ways. Indeed. Okay, so let's see. Real quick, actually, I wanted to throw this in.
I've got a random comment to throw in there. I'll just throw this in there randomly because I saw actually on Twitter one of the big furores was like Elon Musk made a tweet because nowadays he does like influencer level shit, and his was something like the tweet was something like like the job of being a mother is no less important than any other one. No, I'd go further than that, Elon. It's by definition the most important job ever, and here's why. Because every other fucking job comes from a mother, you idiot. So A, to have really good people doing the other jobs, you've got to have mothers. And then B, as the C.S. Lewis quote said, that's all that you had retweeted, the joke of the other jobs is, do you think people go to a factory and put like things on an assembly line because it's fun? They do it so that the woman at home can have a child and they can have an awesome family life and they can live a great life. The spoiler is family is wealth. That's not even some sort of cliche. It's true. As a result, like that whole thing's like people, the joke is that became the divide and conquer site because people were like, well, it is as important. Or like, it is. It's just working at home, like giving people fucking cereal and putting DVDs in. It isn't. It's now someone could do a bad job at it, obviously, but by definition, it's the most important job in the whole world. So anyway, try and tell us we're anti-women. Fuck you. You're anti-women. You can't.
Just check my recent retweets if you want. All right. So we actually had.
I love women. I was even born from one.
I was born from one too. I fancy that. It's weird. Almost like all of us were. Australian esports. Actually, I had this as the headline. Australian esports. Just interesting, kind of throw in there.
We'll probably be in the dock in about 10 years, facing our like lifetime in prison. Did you say you were born from a woman? How dare you assume her gender as you were being born?
No, we'll wind up in some of those Australian camps that they're going to open.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Like nobody wants to go to Australia anymore. So go figure why Australia's fallen into a pit of despair when it comes to their hard, they're getting hard reset right now in terms of esports basically because
they are, yeah.
Nobody's wanted to go there for the past 2 years.
It's sad.
Camps, they've had lockdowns. It's just been a total disaster when it comes to COVID. And I don't know if they're coming out of it or not, but it's brutal. Nobody's talking about those camps anymore, by the way. I don't know, paid for, and they're going to be used for something. I guess we'll see. But Order has the team Order that has actually been just like dominating and actually recently bought out the Renegades roster and just been dominating over there. This just popped up on my feed earlier I'm interested in it because Gomez, that's where he wound up after Extremum. I don't know. Yeah, Extremum, exactly.
Yeah, I think he was in Extreme with as well.
Exactly. After his the rosters that didn't work out for him, he ended up going home. He got there when COVID kicked off, basically, and then I think he just landed here in Order and was starting to get things going as like the head of esports, like the same position that Karn fills out at Fnatic, really, where he's just like the head of gaming or something. Okay. It fell through.
I heard the first thing he did was walk in, and they made a bunch of personnel changes. And what he did was he came in and he said, "You're out of order. You're out of order. You're out of order. This whole court's out of order, man." And then he won like an Oscar or something, didn't he? Oh, sorry, that was Al Pacino and Justice for All. My bad, my mistake. I apologize.
Fire references. $3.5 million they raised, and they've already managed to burn through it all. It looks like they're up for sale. The org order is up for sale apparently, so it's not like closed doors. The CEO's gone dark, and they've closed doors, but it's not totally gone yet. Like they're just up for sale, and it looks like they're trying to find new leadership and trying to find some new rounds. But the reason why this was interesting, not only for Gomez, but also just like Australian esports in general, it was already rough, and there was that drama around how many teams were going to be able to qualify to RMRs from the Asia region, and Oceania, Australia is getting thrown into that region as well. But I mean, dude, that it feels like that whole scene is just going to take a massive hit and have to go through this deep rebuild phase now after Rona, really kicked them in the dick, because they needed to be able to travel, to be able to get around. They needed lands to be able to travel too, because otherwise you are just competing in Asia if you're out there. It's like South Africa when Copenhagen Games and ESWC shut down. That was pretty much it as far as like some of those scenes like South Africa, Australia, where it's just like you have to fly to the event and compete there because there's no online.
Oh, and remember, Semler, here's the thing people will forget. You know this. Back in like 2016, 2017, a load of players like the Draken and those guys from Epsilon and the guys who became Heroic and like Valde and them, they used to, if you remember, when you made it to the top of tier 2 in Europe and the bottom of tier 1, there would be lands in China that you would go to where you could win against like Tai Lu, and you got like 50k for first place. Like, dude, here's another thing people don't think about with the Australians. There hasn't been a way to get into China these last few years. Like that's been like way off limits for coming in. Like, it's not, you can't just frivolously rock up in China anytime randomly in the last 3 years. So I've no doubt that scene is either just Chinese teams or there's just no access for the Australians. And obviously, famously, they already had really bad internet left. People don't know. The way you can always explain to someone that they don't know how big the country of Australia is they don't get similar, that the internet isn't even good within Australia. Like, you can't even live on the west and the east coast and play with good ping and routing. Like, that's just inside their country, guys. So you can imagine if you take away from them a whole international land circuit and then a sort of regional land circuit, what have they got left? And then you add in JKS is gone, Azza might go soon, fucking Dexter's over, and like, they've got nothing. We have actually completely stripped mined that entire fucking scene, and then we've just left them with nothing. They're like, it's like the joke is they're back. Like, this is like what it was like at 1.6, mate, when they were just nobodies. And if you saw Australians in a tournament, the joke is that was like having a walkover on your bracket. It was like, oh, they're going to beat them. Who gives a fuck?
Who's going to be the next Sponge, right? Because like Sponge, he was the one who really stuck with it, brought the teams up, and was competitive here in Europe, and he actually managed to earn his way into tournaments with that team. It's like, who's going to be the next guy who's going to find a roster, build it up together, get them up, and actually get them to LAN events where they can then compete and try and break through? Because it feels like they have to start all over again. That's the vibe that I get watching.
They do.
Not even like just CS:GO, but like Australian esports. It feels like they have to start over again almost in a way after these 2 years. They got hit. They're some of the hardest to get hit by all of these lockdowns and what's happened in the past couple of years in terms of esports. Because, man, I mean, you really just saw it all kind of shrink to North America, shrink to Europe, and then everything else kind of just go into the dark. And you're right, like, Australia's a fucking continent. It's huge. Like, you just go, ping from one side to the other, forget it. It's brutal out there. It's a hard place to make it work. So I just wanted to throw that in there and to obviously make it aware that because the news was just like, oh, order is out, order is done. But Gomez, he actually had a tweet longer that he put out there, and he made it clear that they were still open and that they were looking for support. And so, I mean, if you want to be the guy to revitalize, to make Australian esports great again, CS:GO great again, get out there and see if you can get in touch with the order guys and see if there's anything to go there. Because, I mean, Gomez is not a guy to be trifled with in that sense. Like, he is one of those guys who you could probably trust to build you a team and to make a system, because he's actually got experience now for years in the CS:GO scene and internationally as well, living internationally over in America and everywhere. So, I mean, feels like that would be a good bet to get behind him. I'm just curious to hear the backstory one day, if we ever are going to get the backstory in terms of like what actually happened, because you raised $3.5 million and you close a year later, or you put yourself up for sale a year later. It kind of makes you wonder, like, what was the game plan there? What happened to make it fall through? So, yeah, just some quick thoughts there. I was curious about it. We can move into the G2 stuff, because then we're going to talk about the RMR qualifiers, and then obviously we got to talk about Blast, because Blast is kicking off this week. But real quick, I mean, we already got a few jokes in, but it really is like the Xtaz situation. So what he says is that essentially when talked about Alexi B and why Alexi B had to leave, it really was just like it sounded like there was just a conflict of visions that they just could not rectify. Like, Alexi was on a different page from everybody else. He had a more structured way and almost it was almost like Xtaz was saying like an out of date way of calling the game, of wanting to play the game. And Xtaz wanted to have a bit more of a free and loose style with how the approach was. And it sounds like Hooksy, after a long interview process, has a similar style in mind where he wants to give more freedom to the players for plays and less structure the way that Alexi wants it. So, I mean, it feels like this is it. It's finally the end of this speculation in terms of Hooksy and JKS and everybody joining G2. Like, this is the roster. G2 have finally announced it. So, I mean, I guess final thoughts on this G2 roster and what's going on with Xtaz before we go into Blast.
Here's the thing about even the way you said that there. This is where I almost, like, if people don't know, one thing that sucks basically about working in esports is you can't turn your brain off and just look at things like a fan. You always know the things you know behind the scenes in the past track record. And so as a result, oftentimes you're going to seem way more cynical than other people because they're like, oh, why are you so jaded? Well, I've actually seen things you haven't. So if you'd experienced this thing 10 times in a row, you might think it was going to happen an 11th time. So even that statement, right, sounds great on the surface. In fact, it's actually what you'd want to hear if you were the players in G2 and the fans. Don't worry, the last IGL didn't fit the vision of the coach. Expressly, we're going to say the coach, not the star player. And because he didn't fit the style of the coach, good news. We've interviewed for a new in-game leader, and he perfectly fits the style. Now, here's where my brain locks in again, and I go, if I'm Hooksy walking into this interview, right, first thing I'm going to go out of my way explicitly to make sure that Xtaz and whoever else is in the room understands is, I'm the not Alexi B. You know everything you didn't like about Alexi B? Good news. I don't do any of that. You know all the stuff you wish Alexi B would do? Yeah? Good news. That's my shit. Oh, what's that? You know what? Thing about me is, I know, listen, guys, don't take too much from Copenhagen Flames. I wasn't working with a lot there. It was like old man Roy, who was just finished with his shift at the mill. I had fucking Jabby. I mean, he's now off fucking blowing tournaments with Cadian, everyone's crying. He said, you know, I hadn't had a lot to work with, so I had to impose a lot of tactics. We had to like run a lot of extreme stuff. But here's the thing, I've always thought if I had just a genius of a man with a bread-shaped head, I'd give him freedom. I'd let him do whatever he needs to do. And the other thing is, if his cousin was playing, well, you know, La Cosa Nostra, family is family, I'd obviously let his cousin do anything as well. I tell you what though, I would, and he's sort of like cold reading him, but if there was like a 17-year-old Russian, I'd maybe make them, I'd give him freedom as well. That's right. Yep. He'd also have freedom. But then if I got like an Australian, I'd probably make him do the spotted roles. Did I? I passed. Oh, good. Yes. Well, that's just lucky because it just turns out we're on the same page. So, that's exactly the amount I wanted offered in the contract. Tell you what, I can sign right now. You know what? I've got another interview, but I'm happy to sign now if you are. So we all, you know, like I'm making a joke of it, but part of it almost is like that, isn't it? Like as I say,
hang on the money, dude.
The problem is, it's not like this is just someone heard publicly they're getting rid of Alexi B. Well, there's been all this speculation for months about it. There've been all these interviews about it with Alexi B, with Nico, with Xtaz, with Carlos. So the joke is anyone walking into that should know what they're walking into and should actually have a sense of what they're doing. With that said, though, I do actually think this is plausible. I do think that the Alexi B thing's been driven way too far. Like, here's an angle that's going to blow your minds. Let's say Nico's telling the truth. Maybe Nico really doesn't ever explicitly say to Alexi B, I don't like the way you're calling, I think you're micromanaging too much, or you're doing too much yourself in the round and you're not putting me in a position. Maybe he doesn't do that, right? But then maybe he just doesn't do that. Maybe he just lets Alexi B hang in the wind and just goes, I'm not anything your leader, bro. You in game lead. You keep doing your style. That's what you want to do. For all you know, that's the case, right? And by the way, if you're Alexi B, if someone doesn't give you any feedback, you're just going to keep doing your shit, aren't you? Like, what's going to change? Because that's the problem, I think, with that team. Is like a lot of superstars in the game. I think the way that they're toxic isn't they tell you to your face your shit. I think what they do is they just leave you like a worm on a fucking hook, twisted in the wind, and just hoping that you can read their fucking mind and give them exactly what they want. And if you can't, well, their cousin, their friend, and their owner will make sure that someone else does. But never them, of course. They're always not tainted by the Watergate scandal. You know, associated but not tainted. Like,
the way this goes, though, man.
I know, it's so dirty. I think I sort of do think ultimately, like, here's the problem. If you're going to have Nico in your team, you do want a team that fits his style best. The coach is going to have to be involved because we've seen Nico isn't the craziest winning personality ever. So you want the coach to run the team. And yes, you should definitely fit the coach's style. Now, what I find mad about this is, when I've listened to Alexi B comms, everyone goes, it's just a micromanager all the time. I thought a lot of that was because he had pretty bad star players. He had super inexperienced star players with no land. He had Mantu, Issa, and Flames are his best players he's had, guys. Like he's not gonna. You can't just let those guys take over the game. They don't know how to. They're nobody's. So in those teams, I do think he micromanaged. I doubt he completely micromanaged Nico all the time. I do think if your team fails, this is a point that's a very key point. If tactics fail and people can't get on the same page, you are inherently going to have to micromanage them because they don't know what to do next. The reason those famous comms back in the days of the Fnatic guys were so amazing, and the reason why, if you've ever have actually heard them, the Danish comms of Astralis are amazing, it's because they don't sound like they have to talk that much. Because the point is, it's not breaking down. They all know what they're doing now. They know what they're going to do next. They all got a shorthand of like, this means like 15 extra things that you don't know if you're not me and the other guy that have been a team together. And part of that's why, because those cores of players played together years and years, like half a decade. Nico hasn't played with fucking Modesty for very long. Hunter hasn't played with fucking Alexi B. Like, these are all brand new connections. Even the core of that team, because the core didn't include the IGL, I don't even think should be a core. This was like a brand new lineup as far as I'm concerned. There's only basically fucking Hunter and Nico have any connection. Like, Jax didn't even look like he was used in the same role necessarily. Like, I thought the whole thing was a clusterfuck. So I'm willing to make this move because I don't think Huxley's better than Lexi B, but I certainly think the others didn't seem to fuck with Lexi B in the team and it wasn't working. So we can gamble on something else. Huxley seemed like a half decent one. I will say, I think this puts actually a little bit more of the pressure on JKS in my opinion, mate, because if you ever look at Huxley's stats, his stats are fucking appalling. And he definitely in Company of Flames, I thought, put himself in way too many scenarios where he had to frag. And he wasn't Carrigan, so he can't get away with that. I'm sorry. Alexi B's a way better fragger than this guy. So if you're going to take away any, I know he didn't have great stats, but Huxley's an even worse fragger. So if you're taking a bit of that way, the good news is I do think JKS is going to frag and way more consistently than Jax. So I think that part evens up. But ultimately, you are going to come down to, this is where I end. Ultimately, mate, win or lose, the team has to be about Nico being one of the best players in the world. If that condition is not met, the rest is all moot. Like, we can make JKS from 2019. We can get fucking Huxley going at the best that Copenhagen Flames have ever gone. We can bed Modesty in. We can get Hunter his role. But if Nico isn't amazing at the star player role, they're not going to be number one. They'll just be a good team. They'll be number 5. They'll be number 3. So the rest of the other factors, there's a lot of interesting stuff we can discuss, but ultimately it does still come down to, will this be the team that makes Nico amazing again? So if it's implied this is the right IGL for this coach, I'm willing to try it. I think it's worth a shot. What are your thoughts on this move? There's tons of moving parts on this one.
I mean, I'm over here just thinking, okay, it's Nico gets a lot of flack, right? As in like, okay, he's this mastermind pulling the strings behind the scenes. What if he isn't even doing it knowingly? It's just that because he is operating in that sphere of I am the star, everybody's going to naturally get picked up in that gravity and try and stay with him, because D2 have made it abundantly clear, at least from the messaging and from how they've acted and just, the mood of when G2 picked Nico up. It's like, this is going to be their star player. Yeah. They're going to do whatever it takes. Kind of like Zywoo and Vitality vibes, where they were just like, Zywoo's our star and we're going to do everything we can to get him trophies. It's the same way with Nico. So, I mean, that's why it's so easy to make these kinds of jokes. It's low-hanging fruit because, I mean, at the end of the day, it does feel like G2 and Nico are going to be inseparable. And from there, Hunter is kind of like you say, in the family, so you're not necessarily, he's going to have a little bit more leeway perhaps than normal, than any other player on the team would, just because him and Nico, that's it. They're literally blood. So when the whole team is about building up on Nico, you're going to naturally align yourself with Nico at that point if you want to stay on the team and keep making that fat stack of cash, because G2 is one of the wealthiest teams in the scene and they pay well. So, you want to stay on G2. So you're naturally like, it's not even necessary that Nico pull the strings directly. He can literally just be indirectly having conversations around and everybody's reading the room on what Nico's saying that way. Or it's just the G2 management who are just going to be thinking like, how do we get the best out of Nico? And so maybe sometimes we're giving Nico a bit of a rough time because, maybe he isn't literally the one who's pulling the strings, but whether he likes it or not, he is going to have that influence on the team, I feel like, watching from the outside, which is, again, why it's so easy to make these jokes, because whether he likes it or not, I think that's what's happening. Now, with the Huxley...
And also, there's the other... you sort of alluded to it there, but another reason why it's bullshit to do this angle, Semra, is this. That's like saying, by that logic, almost none of the Mafia Dons ever killed anyone. They're all innocent. They weren't the one that put the fucking Stanley knife in your neck. Oh, that was the guy who they told to do that. Well, you haven't got me on tape saying it. Oh, come on, mate. It beggars belief. Like, we all know that they were fucking doing that, don't we? Like, that's the point. Here's the thing. In a court of law, Nico's lawyers are going to get him off everything. In the spirit of what might be going on, I think everyone has a sense of what the case might be. As you say, at a minimum, it's like a fucking implication of being around him. It's an inference at a minimum, right?
Yes, you know his position in the team, and so that position is, that's how it's going to be built around it. Whether he has a hand in anything or not, you feel like, okay, he is.
It's like I always say, because I love this saying from English.
We're going to keep building around him.
You know that saying we have in English, that idiom that goes, you know which way your bread is buttered.
Well, yeah, there you go.
That's what I always say about teams. Like the joke of someone like Nico is, it's the same as Simple and Zero. They wouldn't even have to be overtly toxic. Like everyone in that team, as you say, knows my job in this team is to play with this guy and have him win this guy. Like it's already inferred that you get all the attention. So you don't need to demand it. That's what being a superstar is.
Sure. No, that is definitely it. I mean, Yanko's out there saying that people are not going to change it. I feel like it's easy to make the jokes because they're there, but it's also there is a grain of truth to it. Otherwise, the jokes wouldn't land. Otherwise, the jokes wouldn't be funny. And so,
I've said this in my videos, mate. I have spoken to Nico's teammates in multiple teams, and they have told me behind the scenes what he is like. So you can say publicly about your friend all you want, and you can defend it because, it's like I said, they defend it like a lawyer. They go, show me the public evidence. I don't need to show you shit, motherfucker. I've talked to the people you know that I know, and they've told me the things that you know that I know that they know. So shut the fuck up. Listen, play defense for your mate all you like. Like, one reason why I get why they do it is people do go too far with it. Like, they did the same thing to Elige last year, Semler. So for years and years and years, I tried to make an explanation about Elige's character. That's a very subtle one, which is that in Team Liquid, people thought Simple was the toxic one because Simple would just tell you straight to your face, fuck you, you are shit. Elige, though, would just quietly not talk to you. And that was in his own way, kind of a fucked up way to punish you. He wouldn't tell you what was bothering him. He wouldn't say things like, you just failed. Yeah. And what the sad thing about that is, Semler, in winning up people over by explaining the narrative, there's then some people who then when Team Liquid was at their worst were like, right, well, it was obviously Elige because he's the only one who was there the whole time. So he was the reason they choked all the time. He's the most toxic one. And it's like, now you've gone too far the other way. Because it's the same thing with Nico. It's like I said on past episodes. If everyone tells me Nico was only an egotistical maniac who was a loser who didn't deserve to win, then I'll have to be the one who's an eco defender because he isn't. He's a fucking one of the best players to ever play this game. His problem is, and this is why I will always say this, he can only play in international teams, which is very unlike all the other superstars. Simple can play with people who speak Russian or Ukrainian his entire life if he wants. Device never needed to play with anyone who spoke Swedish. These players, Cold Zero, could play with Brazilians forever. Nico does not have that option. And then also, he's played in some really bad teams early in his career, which I've no doubt skewed his personality and who he was as a player. And on the one hand, it crafted one of the craziest one-man carries of all time. But on the other hand, I imagine it probably fucked up some of his elements. Like, guess what? I wouldn't be very trusting of my teammates if every time I throw them the ball, they miss. I'll start just taking, like Kobe Bryant style, I'll just take the shot with 3 defenders on me. Like, I can make the shot. That's what happens when you've been in these bad teams. So some of it, by the way, also is like, you have to have people that he can trust. You have to create an environment that he can feel comfortable in. And even if he's got a little bit of baggage, he's a bit sensitive, it's worth it to deal with Nico, though, isn't it? He's worth it as a player.
Yeah, the guy that we're going to find out whether or not he's worth it is, I think, Monacy. Like JKS, sure, there's gonna be. I think JKS showed that he can be a versatile player and that he can get his job done. Right, he's got his role. Like,
and he's not going to have to be a star in this team, which is key to me.
Exactly. I don't think he needs to be a star, but he can definitely. We know that he can frag, and I think that he can be like a good support star, like your second or third guy. But the one that I'm really watching now, and that's actually been, some additional pressure has been put on, is Monacy. And Extaz himself, that interview ends with him saying, it's like, we're going to be expecting more out of him, and that's going to be really interesting considering, again, still not that much experience, playing internationally, living internationally as well, not playing from home. So no friends, family, all that. No, he's living on the road with the G2 team. So there's a lot already that's happening outside of the server that sounds, that's going to make things even more difficult for him. But now it feels like they're really going to be turning to him to start getting results with that AWP.
Dude, I'm not a fan of this.
Hooksy has got such abysmal stats. If we can't count on Hooksy, because I think Hooksy is going to be like a Boomich. I think they're going to chuck him through smokes, chuck him around walls. He's going to just play that entry space creating IGL where he just throws himself in, gets some info, and then makes a call. Even though I think that it's not exactly the most effective way, but if it works for G2, if it just means that they can have an IGL and Hooksy, fine, great, he can do that sort of thing. But that is going to put a lot of pressure on guys like Monacy to step up and actually start getting some more results with that AWP, because they can't rely on Hooksy. Like, Hooksy's not going to be that guy who's going to run around the corner and actually get a kill. He's going to run around the corner and probably die, and then you're going to be in a 4v5 and you're going to have to fight your way out. And so maybe that's the direction that Extaz wants to take this team, because he keeps mentioning it, how they want a more freewheeling style. Like, he's almost going straight back to like OG LDLC French style or something like that, where everybody's just going to be popping heads and they're just going to be making individual plays all over the place. And that's actually what's going to win you tournaments, is because guys are crazy with pistols and they keep having these upset rounds just on individual skill. They're able to make it happen. Like, Extaz is reaching back into the OG French days to make the dream alive here with this team. I just don't know if you can do that in Counter-Strike now. like there's so much structure, there's so much experience now with these teams. It feels like they've seen it all in a sense, you know. So to be able to just pop off individually and hard carry, I don't think that's necessarily a winning strategy yet. So I'm not sure if I'm on board with this change. I feel like it's kind of just it's an attempt that you have to try, because if you have to go the other way, I guess, right? Like, you've tried the structured wave. You brought on Alexi B. He plays a structured style that may or may not be out of the meta, but he plays a structured style. If that didn't work for 6 months, I guess they're going to be like, right, well, that was the left side of the spectrum. Now we're going to go try the right side of the spectrum and just try and go freewheeling. Everybody shoots, you know, just click heads, run around corners, try and set up, you know, try to set up duels for everybody and like help everybody out. But we're going to play loose and see if that style works. So they're out there trying to find their identity right now. That's the issue with this G2 team. It feels like they still just don't have an identity that you can get behind. You know, it's like, you think certain teams are out there still. You think Na'Vi, you think structured, you think that they've got a plan. They've got those freaking notes on the table. All of the players have got color coded notes telling them exactly what they need to do each round. You know, that's a structured team when you think Na'Vi. And then you have you have Simple popping off and winning rounds, but that's just the icing on the cake. That just helps. So it feels like these guys, you know, it's like you look at G2, it's just like, okay, is Nico the superstar? Not sure. Is m0NESY the superstar? Not sure. Is it a structured style? Is it a freewheeling style? Like, what is going on with this team? So that's what we need to see in the next 6 months. Like, they need to show us what the identity of G2 is. And I'm not sure if we're going to get that from Xtaz or if we're going to get that from Hooksy, if Hooksy's going to have the chops to be able to actually say, like, okay, this is going to be our vision. This is going to be our style. This is how we're going to play as a team. And this is how it's going to go. I'm not seeing it. I'm a little skeptical, but you know, we'll have to see for Carlos' sake, I guess, because you can't just keep spending money forever.
This is why I personally, if you go back to the past episodes, I thought Alex was the one they should have actually joined the team, because he's worked with Xtaz, and B, his style is more default, and then C, he's actually a fragger. He can frag as an IGL. Like, this guy can actually get it done. So that's why, to me, I found that bizarre. Maybe they just don't want to spend the money to buy Fnatic. I don't know what the situation is on that one.
Do you think Fnatic could have held out for a big buyout on Alex?
I have no idea what they're doing with him, mate. The problem is nobody knows what Fnatic's doing. Spoiler, some people in Fnatic are literally friends of mine for over 10 years. When they ask me what players to sign and I give them a shortlist, none of the players on the shortlist get signed, or the worst player does. I feel like I'm Flashpoint again, mate. Like, I'm done with people like that. Don't ask me for advice if you're not going to fucking use it all. Don't tell me you have money if you're not going to spend it. You're just wasting my time. So my problem is that one. I think that was a slam dunk to me to try the Alex one. I think could rehabilitated both sets of people. Then I've got this other problem, which I hate that take, which the take of like, we need to put more pressure on m0NESY. Right? The reason you have to do that is your fault, because you signed him to a team that you think was number 2 last year. Wasn't it? Just second at the major, that's all. You think they were number 2, so you think number 1's the only place we can go now. We have to go to the top. So you're telling me you signed a 16-year-old Russian kid with no LAN experience. You paid $600,000. That's the kind of money that, by the way, you buy like device with. And then after all that, you go, well, you cost $600,000 and we need to be number 1, so get cracking, beat Ziwu. Beat Ziwu 2019, be the best player in the world. Go on, you've got Xtaz there, beat Ziwu. That's the most ridiculous circumstances of all time. This guy, if you look where he is in his career, he's now 17. He's played a couple of big LANs. He actually frags generally pretty well. He has a bunch of highlights. He actually doesn't look intimidated by people. He seems like online he's fairly money. He's just a young guy in experience. He's got to have years to develop. This is why I told you, sadly, people like Ziwu and Bit have ruined it for all rookies forever now, because now people have the most ridiculous expectations of what a rookie can do in a way that's totally fucking unacceptable, in my opinion. And I'd also say this, contrast it with actually the peer group he has. So let's compare him with Amanek. That's who he replaced, right? Is he a better AWPer than Amanek? Of course he fucking is. Amanek wasn't winning you any of those games. He was getting his lunch eaten, and he didn't even used to AWP the normal AWP spots because he was a support AWPer. So already he's better than Amanek, so he's doing his job there. Then someone like Bit came in and was God tier. You can't expect that. And also, in that scenario, Bit's not even an AWPer, he's a rifler. Like, you can have games that are off as a rifler. You don't get exposed like you do as an AWPer. You have those games as an AWPer and they drop you that expensive gun and you whiff and you get nothing. You look fucking shit and you're going to have massive scrutiny. Then finally, I'd just say this. Xtaz, really, homie? The man who coached Hyojin and Masuta is going to now try and tell me m0NESY ain't living up to his role. Did you ever see those players play? Kyojin was never good for 1 second ever in tier 1. And Masuta only got I'd say slightly above average.
To be fair, I gotta just go ahead and chime in real quick just to think. I don't think that he was saying like they're going to expect more from him in the future. I don't think that they were saying like he wasn't living up to expectations for now, right? How much more can you expect now? It's his first year. Yeah.
This is the first year of LAN in his career. Like I said, the reason I picked those examples, Semler, is because Kyojin was terrible his entire first year, and Masuta got to play online, and at the end of the online era started to show some promise, and then went to LAN and, funny enough, got rejected himself, and as a result, didn't really make it that often. He would very rarely have big games. Now, true, they're not playing AWP, that's true. But even so, like these players, you were fine with those guys tanking. You know why, Stars? Because you had that Ziwu guy balancing it out. So you know what? Get on your fucking breadhead now. Get Nico. Get him fucking putting the numbers up. And then Monty will have all the time you need to develop. Because the stupidest thing about this to me is this. The reason why him saying I expect more, the problem with that statement is this, Semler, or what? Or else? Well, that's the implication. When you make that statement, I expect more, there is by definition baked into that, what will happen to me if I don't give more? So what I'm saying is this, Semler, he doesn't have to give more. He's tracking perfectly for where someone should be at that level. I'd even say slightly more. I actually expected, by the way, him to have one LAN where he just blows it completely like all young players do. Hasn't even happened, by the way, so far. He's had matches that weren't good, but LANs, generally, he's pretty good most of the time. So I don't get this, mate. Like I say, I have the eye tester watching him, and I think he's tracking perfectly fine for his age, experience level. I do think he has been thrown in the deep end and put in a team that's way too good, but that's also because they had to gamble. Remember, in this scenario, they couldn't. I mean, Carlos literally told you guys this publicly. He quite literally tried to sign. Did sign Nico. He tried to sign Simple, and he tried to sign Ziwu. If none of them are available, then why not gamble on the next Simple or Nico, which is the logic with Monacy? But here's the key thing I want to say, and it's my final point. If he's the next one, then he isn't it yet, is he? So give him time. The whole point of Monacy should be this, in my opinion. It's the wrong philosophy. The dream of Monacy is this, Semler. He can't be the best player in the world now, but you don't need to because you've got Nico. So what you do is you do the Shaq Kobe move. You want to have this guy be the best sidekick initially, then become as good, and when they're both as good in a year, 2 years from now you win everything. And then after that, this is the genius of this move. If you very, very carefully handle this, and it's actually what the Lakers, to some degree, fucked up. You want it to be that when Nico starts to drop off, you still have him then as like a side piece in the game, still winning, but now Monacy's your main carry, and then eventually when you're done with Nico, he can transition out and the team is still number one because you still got Monacy and you bring in another rifler, and that's how you run it. Because in this game, you've got to always be careful with your stars. You've got to keep the right star for as long as you can, as by the way people like Team Liquid have learned with twists. So that's the move for me. I think this whole thing, like the Monacy one for me is the distraction. It's everyone else in the team has problems except Monacy and Hunter, in my opinion, but that's just how I see it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. That actually tracks pretty well. I mean, that's like the expectations coming in. Everybody was just like, oh my God, he's going to take over. It's like you have to keep things in perspective. Up to that point, Monacy was playing in We Play Academy League, where he's playing against tier 2, tier 3 teams, right? He's totally crushing, but also keep in mind that whole Na'Vi roster was built around him. It's like Kenny on Titans back in the day, where it's just like literally everything is built around making Monacy shine, because the whole business model for that team is to find.
They sold him for $600,000. I've not made a killing. Yeah.
You either bring him onto the main roster or you sell him for a massive profit, which then finances your next round of finding talent, and it just keeps the machine going. So there was an acceptable drop off in terms of performance going from We Play Academy up to tier 1. And there wasn't even that crazy a drop off. I mean, the kid in the last 6 months has averaged 1.12 rating, and most of that has been LAN, and some of the biggest, highest pressure LANs as well. So you're
there we go. By the way,
hasn't had a wash.
Y'all tell me, fucking Fallen's competent AWPers. Go show me his stats compared to Monacy's. both LAN AWPers, right? Go and show me them. Go on, have a look. Or here's another one. How about we compare Farley's stats to Monacy's, right? Both primary AWPers in tier 1 LAN teams. Now, which ones should have a better AWPer, guys? The Astralis core or G2? G2's AWPer fucking smoke, Farley. What are you talking about? That's why I say, you notice how I intentionally put like contrasts currently and like for their role in the past team. Like that's, to me, this whole thing's a storm in a teacup. I don't know. Essentially, the main complaint people have is he's not Ziwu. Spoiler, no one is.
Yeah, there's only.
What do you want? What do you want?
That one mystifies me. Astralis are having a bit of
I do think this team should be good though. Like Huxley doesn't even have to be better than XCB. The main thing is, does Nico get his shit together, and does JKS do a better job than Jax? If so, I think G2 does become like a second or third best team and they can contend for the top. Okay, this is the other thing. People think because of how bad the team was earlier this year that they can't be number one. Of course they can. I mean, they can be number one. I just don't see it happening right now. I think that FaZe are just way too powerful, and Na'Vi with Simple I think are too powerful as well. Even for the moves that
G2 have made. I don't think that these moves are sufficient to take a G2 or a Navi in a grand final right now. I feel like
the problem with that is that's if Simple just maintains. We don't know, because here's the thing. Simple right now is also, here's another quote for you. He's reminding me of that classic quote from the end of the movie Juice. That's right, that 90s African-American classic, which starred Tupac as the character Bishop. And famously, he goes, someone says, "Bishop, you're crazy." And he goes, "You know what? Last time you said that, I was kind of tripping, right? But now, you're right. I am crazy. And you know what else? I don't give a fuck." That's apparently Simple now, so I guess if that's who Simple is, then who the fuck knows what's going to happen in Navi, right?
Who knows what happens next? Holy shit. If he's down in Dubai, maybe he's having a good time. That's what we have to tell ourselves. All right.
Well, the joke is he's probably there. Like in many ways, Semler, he's in the heart of Blast Country. What are you talking about?
There you go. He's already just
he
waiting.
wonders where the tournament. Yeah, exactly. By the way,
Wait,
did you like my joke the other day where there was one of those things where, because obviously the event's in Rio again, ESL was using that logic of like road to Rio, and then it said Middle Eastern qualifier, and I was like, this is too perfect, because one day the tournament circuit for ESL will just be road to the Middle East, won't it? That's it. Like some sort of fucked up reverse Silk Road. I know it's metal in it.
Dude, it's just going to go back the other way. And I mean, dude, I'm just waiting for.
And obviously not talking about the good Silk Road there.
Let's get this major. I'm just waiting for the Abu Dhabi major next year, dude. Seriously, like
it'll be on the horizon, of course, as we discussed on the past episode. China and Middle East is where CS is going to be from now on. Just get used to it. By the way, not America, so sadly.
And what's what, dude? I don't know what's I don't follow Valorant news at all, pretty much. But this just popped up in my feed the other day, where apparently the next big tournament for them or whatever is going to be in Istanbul, in Turkey.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, then wasn't expecting that, and out of nowhere, and now you're going to go down to Turkey, to Istanbul, and you're going to start having big events there as well. So if maybe this is just the direction that esports is going to go, is that you're just going to start seeing that shift, over towards the Middle East and getting more involved over there. Nobody, yeah, I don't know. Can't expect anything spicy there. There's a note here that you wanted to talk about, perhaps on the Source 2 side of things. I mean, this is something, I'll give you a quick thought on it. I don't think that Source 2 is going to happen anytime soon, because I still feel like Valve, there's no reason for them to kill the golden goose, because they are printing so much money with CSGO as it is now with the skin market. They're making money hand over fist. And so I don't feel like there's any reason at all for them to mess with that, potentially, because there's just so many things that could go wrong with the port from CSGO to CS or to Source 2. And you could have it could be as big a change as going from like 1.6 to Source, or from Source to CSGO. It could be a completely different game. You still don't know what CSGO would feel like if you put it in the Source 2 engine. And the other point that I wanted to bring up on it is just because I like to have these stats up. You used to be able to see the stats based off of region as well, in terms of player base for Counter-Strike, how many people were playing, but also you could see the servers and the server load for matchmaking, like regionally, which was super sick to have that kind of information. Unfortunately, a few months back that got taken down. I'm not able to get that info anymore, but we can still get the average, player base for Counter-Strike. And I would expect a big move like that to happen if there was a big dip in player interest. Like if there was a big dip and we just saw it drop off a cliff and people just weren't playing Counter-Strike anymore. But like, we're on a steady uptick. Average player base right now, month after month, is just steadily creeping back up again. There was that dip when people started to go back to work after COVID, because COVID was obviously like the big peaks, 800,000 peak concurrent, holy shit, because like everybody was at home working, basically just playing matchmaking during the day, having a good time. But now everybody's going back to the office. They're going back to work. They can't do that anymore. And so you've seen like an appropriate dip in just the peak players, and you've just seen an appropriate dip, in general, in terms of like the average player base on a month to month. But like that average player base, it dipped down to like 500,000, 600,000, but we're getting back up to 600,000 and up again. So like, I don't see the dip where you would need to necessarily do a massive change, put a lot of risk on the table, because we're not seeing a dip in player base, which is essentially like what pays the bills for Valve. So like, what do you think about this Source 2 thing? I feel like it's just people who are bored and they're just like, oh, Source 2, give us Source 2. I don't think it's actually worth the risk for Valve right now to do something like that.
The problem is, one of the things I hate about CSGO as a community is Valve, quite literally, for half a decade, barely communicated with people. And you would even have top pros send them like impassioned letters, and they would not only not reply, sometimes they even got offended and like low-key punished those pros or were rude to them. And like, I thought some of this stuff was actually outrageous if you consider how many billions Valve have made off the esports side of the game, that I think they cynically farmed out to a third-party developer, Hidden Entertainment. And that's why it's called CSGO, and that's why they might now rebrand to Counter. Counter-Strike because they didn't want to put the Counter-Strike label onto a game that they were just going to make a quick buck off in 2012 off the name Counter-Strike and then probably circle back 3 years later and make Counter-Strike 2. It just so happened they tripped over and CS got massive, just like it used to be, and then suddenly they had to backdoor into like, no, this is the real CS now, even though Joe Miller and the rest of them were saying it's not going to be a sequel or a replacement, it's just another game in the franchise. And then ESL famously did the same move themselves. ESL took CS out of the Intel Extreme Masters, put it into the ESL Major series, which was the bitch-made second tier product, but then it got too big and eventually they had to rename it ESL 1 and pretend it was as big as IEM. Also, by the way, they were actually placating Riot, if you don't know, in League of Legends at the time, because that was one of their big money makers. So to bring it all back, here's the issue overall, basically, is in esports, Valve does now communicate with the community, but through probably the most annoying possible vehicle, which is the biggest shithead clout chaser toss bots in the whole scene, who are like semi-anonymous. Some of them have connections to Valve, for real. Some of the biggest dickheads in the whole scene, or just all they do is Twitter clout, they have connections to Valve and they know some of the rumors. More than people who are legit in the scene, by the way. So here's the thing. Those rumors are coming from them. As a result, always a mixed bag. You don't know where to believe it. Famously, the fishiest dude back at 2018 at Face London Major implied something similar, that like there was a new version of Source coming or CS2 or something. Obviously didn't happen back then, which is why people are a bit more skeptical. The issue now is this. The rumor, and it was mainly addressed on this new podcast that Jason, so Moses, Sponge and Yanko are doing, where they talk about this. The rumors behind the scenes, Semler, basically are this, that Source 2, it's more the engine than it's CSGO 2. As in, it's just they would make an engine upgrade, which would have some graphical elements. And the implication I'm getting, Semler, is that it's not the same as like rehauling the whole game and relaunching a new version of Counter-Strike. I'm getting the vibe from what they're saying. In fact, this is explicitly what they're saying, that like this might just be like make CS a bit more like, you know, bells and whistles and a little bit flashier so it looks better and allows you to do things like port over the skins so that the skins remain and the skin market remains, because obviously that is, as you say, the golden goose.
They could potentially risk the skin market. That's what's making
you'd be a fool to.
No way that they do anything that risks the skin market.
But sadly, people have done things like this in the past of esports and killed their own game, so it's not impossible. But I do also think they wouldn't. So that's why, to me, it's not as big an update as people make out, which the problem then becomes, if it's not as big an update, then why is it such a big deal, right? That's the issue. If there's a new version of Counter-Strike, it is a big deal. But here's what I would say. One, as far as I can tell, the skins angle is being taken care of, which I think is essential. In fact, I think it's the most important angle. Two, the implication, actually, Semble, is this is all going to happen very soon. Like, it was even implied it might happen before the major, it might happen during the major, it might happen immediately after the major.
That would be Valve's way.
That is the way of, yeah.
Release essentially what could potentially be a game-altering update that could change the movement or how you aim or all these things that could completely destroy a player's ability to perform. And we'll do it right before the major.
Never forget, Valve literally, before a major, introduced a map randomizer, 2 maps no one had ever played, and NIP won the major using one of those maps.
Like, NIP never forget.
Like,
they got the major.
As far as I'm concerned, that may as well be like fucking... Like, Valve is like Biff from Back to the Future 2 then. You just fucked with the timeline completely for some fucked up reason I don't really understand. Like, okay. I mean, you can't have known NIP would be the beneficiary, but you definitely affected that tournament. If that was on the normal maps, I think it's actually functionally impossible for them to win that tournament. I think it would maybe be like top 8 at best. So I thought that was wild. So they have, as you say, there is a precedent for this. And then the last thing I would say is this, and this is the angle I'd push back on what you said there. I agree with you. I think Counter-Strike should be treated as though it's a game that exists in its own universe only. And you don't know that League of Legends exists. You make decisions that make sense for Counter-Strike. But here's the problem, Semler. Sadly, game developers aren't like that. And these are some of the most fragile people mentally and in terms of like sensitivity and whether they feel wanted and needed. So here's what I think. I think that the reason also why you do this move is a direct pushback against Valorant, because Valorant has had its time, it's had its push. It's actually, if anything, probably peaking right now. Now's the time. You've had the CSGO majors, which have been great to bring CS back and level it and show it's got its own game. If you bring out like something that seems like CS is the new game, because remember, early on with a graphical update, you'll get those dickheads like the Shrouds of the world will rush back and stream CS for the first week and get all the viewership and the numbers will be crazy and it'll be like 2 million people watching live when you're on the Twitch Discovery for CSGO, etc. They'll do that like everyone does. Ninja will play it for a few days or whatever. Oh, this game's not too bad. Like, so that's the other reason I think they might do it, is just part of the game wars, as it were.
Well, you know, that's the thing. They have a track record of they have just that. The track record for Valve is just that they care. They don't. It's like, I just want to say, like, they just don't care about esports.
Off the top of my head, wasn't Wasn't that even the timing? Didn't they make it like go free to play around the time Valorant was coming out or something? I think the timing was like fairly similar on that.
Was it that? I can't remember that timeline if that was how it lined up or not. They did do the free to play model. I mean, it's just like over time, it's just they're taking these steps. But at the end of the day, like as far as Valve are concerned, like esports is fine and dandy, but the real thing that makes the money is the casual player base, is the people who are just playing, who are showing up, playing, wanting getting skins. They buy keys, they unlock cases. That's who's actually making. And so when you say, like that pro players have written Valve in the past, and really, like Valve used to have interviews with the players at the majors and take time to talk to the players, and they would get the feedback. But the majority of the time, they're taking that kind of feedback, and maybe there's something that they're going to run with. But the majority of the time, they're just like, okay, that's interesting. That's like the competitive side of things, but we're catering for like the 99.9%, which are not competitive and who just want to play the game today more than ever, right? Once upon a time, I feel like 2013, 2012, 2013, when the game first came out, like it was really the majority of the audience was hardcore. Like they watched esports. You played Counter-Strike Go because you wanted to watch, you wanted to be competitive, and there was definitely more of a one-to-one kind of relationship between viewer numbers and actual player base. But like today, I feel like it's grown. The game has grown so much that Valve are thinking about how to make the game more easily accessible for the average player. They're not necessarily thinking about how to make the game as competitive or as cutthroat as it could be. I mean, the economy change is in and of itself is just a perfect example of that, how they just want to make things more forgiving and take it away from what it used to be, which was a bit more competitive, right? So
yeah, but here's why those
I wouldn't be surprised if they make a big change right before a big tournament, because for them, there's like, whatever, it's just like, it'll make things more interesting. It'll spice things up. That could literally be them. It's just like, Source 2 before the major, we're going to break viewer records. They don't care about who's winning. They don't care about like who's actually going to be, is this a good representation of who is the best at the game at the time? They could very well couch it. And I've heard devs use this argument in the past where it's just like, well, being able to adapt on the fly is also a quality that a pro must have, and they could use that kind of logic and just say like, yeah, we'll make a big change and, let the best team win. And there you go. That could very well happen as well. So I wouldn't be shocked if Valve made that kind of play again and just said, okay, fuck it, we're going to go for it. But personally, like, I don't think right now, they could do it, but I'm going to come back to my original point, which is I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I don't think that, like, in terms of player base, I don't think that there's any reason to fuck with it. And I still feel like risking the skin market, it's such a big risk that I don't feel like you take that risk unless you absolutely have to if you're Valve, because CSGO is spaghetti code. It's a total disaster. So, messing with that in any way is really risky stuff, and I just don't see it.
Here's the problem. One, it's rich that Valve would ever say, like, you got to adapt to the times. Like, oh, you mean like when you guys would never have banned anyone ever for match fixing if Richard Lewis didn't force your hand, and you've banned 0 people since? Fuck off. You just actually sling your fucking hook. You haven't adapted that whatsoever. The way you adapted is you built a second wing onto your mansion. That's your version of adapting. Oh, I'm going to have to put another pool in, I guess. That's you fucking adapting to the harsh environment CSGO's brought you. And then secondly, as you say there, half the problem is, like I said earlier, Semmler, if this was a game that Valve had created in the first place and they understood the principles that made Counter-Strike a great esport, and then they made a new version called CSGO, then I'd be interested in their thoughts. They didn't invent Counter-Strike. They didn't make Counter-Strike. They didn't invent any of the good things about Counter-Strike. All they did is pay someone else cynically to make a port of it, which means it's not even your code and it's not your programmers working with it. That's already a nightmare in most projects that people don't know, because famously, people who are programmers do just use little band-aid spaghetti horde fixes. They don't put in they don't put in all the like notes next to their code saying what it does. They just assume like, well, I know what it does, so I'll fix it next time. And then even sometimes the programmer himself can't remember when he goes back to that part. So as you know, if you know like the history of League of Legends, why League of Legends, the game's not a very great tech-wise game. And it has loads of bugs and flaws and things that break, because it wasn't intended to be a top esport like 15 years later. Like the game's been going for too long. So yeah, the problem I have is it's not like they could make the game better anyway. Similar. What the fuck does Valve know about what makes Counter-Strike great? They aren't Goose, man. They didn't make the game. They didn't develop it. They didn't make the fucking map pool for the circuit. They didn't make the tournament format. They didn't even invent. I'll stress this because fans don't get this. Valve didn't invent max rounds 15. They didn't invent 5v5. They didn't invent max rounds as an economy system. These things are all invented separately. So like, I've always thought personally, I don't know what the fuck Valve are taking credit for. Like, yeah, you let us buy the game off you. That's about it. So I don't think they can fix it. That's why, if you notice my position, to go back to what you said about Source 2 as well, is every time the game's good, I just want Valve to let it go. Just let us play a good game, please. Please don't break it further. That's what I think. Like, every time I hear they're doing an upgrade, it sounds to me like I'm helping. Like, oh God, great. You're going to break it further, aren't you?
Wouldn't that just be the world where it's like, oh, actually just let the game stabilize for like a solid year without touching anything, and let's just see, oh, something seems imbalanced right now. Like, let the pros figure it out, because the pros will adapt around it. They'll figure ways to counter it, and then you see the game progress. You don't necessarily need to go fucking with things every day. But okay.
As always, tons of topics to dive into here on Revenge of By the Numbers. Now, of course, our sponsor, Esports Bet. If you're someone who likes to bet and you have yet to take advantage of their offer, they have a deposit bonus. If you use our referral link below, you can get a 50% deposit bonus on up to $200 on your crypto. And if you do, you'll also get a bonus of DJT of 50x, however much you put in. So if you were to put in $100, you would get 5,000 DJT to play in the World's Prediction Series 2 competition and potentially win hundreds of thousands of dollars of USDT.
There's a couple more things that I wanted to get to. The IEM qualifiers have kicked off, or the Road to Rio Major Qualifiers have kicked off, and just a couple of points that I wanted to bring up, because I mean, these have actually been pretty competitive. Avangard is just shitting on all Swedish hopes and dreams, because you had the team Get Right Forest, Freiburg, they reunited, they were in the qualifier, they were doing well, and then Avangard beat them. And then in the next round, actually, maybe not the exact next round, but in a following round, Avangard then took out Eyeballers. So that's the Swedish hopes and dreams for this qualifier just dashed to pieces by a single team. Avangard just shitting all over them. So you hate to see it, but there's more qualifiers. So maybe we'll see Forrest and the lads get back at it, and they can do some work. Swedish CS, needs a revival. The other one is that Astralis got taken out. So I don't know if you saw that bit of news, but Astralis not making the cut, taken out by Aurora Gaming, which
there's a couple of players people might know from there. They're not total unknowns.
No, but I mean, it's still Astralis. Like, it's Astralis should not be a team that's getting taken out.
No, but here's the problem, Sam.
These best of one scenarios and these open qualifiers can be like, if you're online and a team is feeling it, you could definitely lose in this sort of scenario, and Astralis are the victims this time.
This is the problem. So what I did is I purposely let you name all those names so that I could do this. So let's just count some names out here. Glaive. We're going to go with Blame F, one of the best players in the world right now. So greatest IGL of all time, one of the best riflers in the world right now. We've got Forrest there, who everyone was saying can still play at tier 1. We've got... let me see. Who else?
Fnatic didn't make it, so that's Crim's out of the picture.
Yeah, we've got Flusher. JW. Right, here's the problem, guys. This is why it was so incredibly unfair that for all these last years, everyone kept saying about my mate MSL, how could he be a tier 1 IGL if he fails in these open qualifiers? I'm sorry, Glaive just failed, guys. You just told me he's the GOAT and that he's still active now. Remember, he was top 4 AM clone a month ago, and he just failed this qualifier. Then we have Forrest. You guys say he can still play at tier 1. He's not even in the rest of the RMR. What about JW and Flusher? Flusher's supposed to be one of the greatest minds ever. Failed the Spoiler, everyone can fail these qualifiers. By the way, this is why it's so key when you get into a top team that you don't go and make a new org, because you have to start from square one. You get no ranking points. You get no invites. You start from 0 and you start in round 1 of one of these qualifiers. You play against a bunch of randoms who might be cheating. They might be all on LAN ghosting. They might have, remember, this is a topic from last week, they might have their coach talking while your coach can't talk because you guys are streaming, you know what I mean? Like, there's so many angles. Then add in as well, if people don't know, the way that people like, back in 2015, it was the GG Play guys from Bulgaria. Then in later years, it was CIS teams like Vanguard to Virtus Pro. The reason these teams became notorious before they became LAN teams is you would face them in like round 3 of an upper bracket open qualifier and they would just dust you off in the BO1. Because the other thing all pros hate, Semler, is that because we allow so many people to compete, which I think is just functionally stupid to treat like these teams we're talking about, like they're the same as a mix that me and you could make and enter. Because they do that, there's too many games to run. You wouldn't have time to run a double elim best of 3 bracket. So what you do is you cynically run the first rounds as BO1 and you just hope everyone who's good survives that fucking like minefield. And if they survive, then they get to play real Counter-Strike with some proper series and time, and you know who you're playing, and you have a couple of hours off. But that first part of the tournament is so ridiculous. It's like, what do you expect? So I think people have gone way too harsh. Like, I have a really hard time still when I look at these failures saying that's just because the team's not good enough. I know obviously that's what, or by the numbers, has been done in the past as well. But I always think like these online qualifiers, there's so much variance gets included there. I think it makes a lot of the, especially when it's then a BO1. I mean, that's not even Counter-Strike. Remember, when you watch a top team play Counter-Strike, you aren't watching them just frag out. It's not a DM. What you're watching is they know their opponent, they have scouted their opponent, they have a coach, they have watched demos, they are comparing their tactics playbook to our tactics playbook, they are looking for niches, like our AWP can get an edge here. You're not doing any of that when you play a random BO1 against an opponent you don't know, that you didn't know 2 hours ago you were playing, and you're just in the map now playing Mirage against them. That is just like, you may as well be in a fucking matchmaking game. Spoiler, I mean, here's a random question I'll ask fans. Let me see if fans think this is real. Do you think if I put together the real 5-man lineup of Na'Vi and I had them stream for 1 day and just play matchmaking 5v5, their stack against whoever they're matched against, would they ever lose in a day? I'll tell you right now, they would. They would absolutely at least lose 1 map. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They could be playing nobodies, because that's just the way the game works. Like, this isn't chess. You can't just be Magnus Carlsen and just win every time because you're superior and your rating level. That Counter-Strike isn't that game. There's so much variance anyway. I always used to say this, dude. The amazing thing about Counter-Strike is how consistent it is. Remember, in Counter-Strike, think of how you play the game, right? If you run around the corner and a flash goes off half a second too early, fucks the whole round. If you go around a corner and you look right and the guy's hiding to your left, he kills you instantly. Despite these random elements, the game's fairly consistent. Rounds play out the way we expect. T-sides play out the way we expect. People can understand what positions to be in. But that's because at tier 1, it's a small sample size and we're all playing against other top pros. If you just put in everyone in the world who plays Counter-Strike, the game becomes too random, in my opinion. Like, you can't guarantee. Because as I'm saying, if you were to put Na'Vi in round 1 of one of these open qualifiers, there's a world where they might not qualify. It could happen. I mean, the Yakuma guys cheated last year and beat them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it's what you're talking, like what that is how the meta evolves around tier 1 and how it's going to get recycled as well. Like, certain ways you're when all of your opponents play a certain way, that's you get accustomed to playing in that fashion, and then you try and play somebody else, say like a tier 2. That's why you can see teams just get blown up in tier 2 or tier 3 tournaments. It's because they're dropping down to a place they have no idea what the current meta is, and you still have guys who can click heads, and anything is possible. Exactly like you say.
You remember this? We've been there at these tournaments. This happens even in the LAN circuit. You remember what would happen? There was always that really weird spot. Funny enough, it was like MSL's teams. There would be teams that if they went to the real tier 1 LAN, like IEM Cologne, they'd have like a crack at top 8 or top 4. So then they'd go next tournament to like a DreamHack Open, and you'd be like, well, they're going to win it easily, and they'd come like 3rd. You remember when these things would happen? Because what you're assuming there is because they're like this good in tier 1, like in tier 2 they'd be, no, you don't know. Maybe it's the wrong set of opponents you played in tier 2. You know what I mean? Like, I remember Furia and people like Gambit and stuff falling down and not winning DreamHack Opens. Meanwhile, they were like in the mix in the big tier 1. So if that on LAN, you can imagine when you open up to the whole internet what happens. And then add in one last detail. God forbid you run into an opponent that you've never heard of, Semler, and they actually are just the next team. Maybe they're the next Gambit youngsters, and you don't know in a year from now they'll be good. You think they're nobodies in your second round match. They're going to beat you. You're going to look like a fool, and no one will even remember this match when they become famous next year.
Trying to figure out again who was on Honorous. Oh, Honorous is Taz.
That was Neo and Taz's team.
Yeah, that was a Neo and Taz's team. And I'm just going through some other results.
I mean, people have to realize they were washed in fucking 2017. It's now 2022, guys. Sure. What do you expect on that one? You know,
but dude, they went 19-17 against Team Falcons, which is Misuda and NBK's team. And then Misuda and NBK, I mean, they're in the last round here. They managed to make it past Copenhagen in Flames. They took Fnatic out in a best of 1, 16-14. And then they took OG out 2-1. So it's like, credit to NBK's team. Like, holy shit, like that's not bad. You're taking out some of the teams that you again would expect to make it deep in these kinds of qualifiers, and you're actually doing it on a team that you recently joined as well. So good on NBK and the lads. They're going up against Aurora Gaming next. And who's on Aurora? Yeah, that's it. Exactly. It's the guys who actually took out Astralis. So wild. OG aren't done yet, though. They're still in the lower bracket, so there's still a chance for OG to make it through on this one. There's also another 3 qualifiers, guys. So it's, you know, it's like we're pointing out that Astralis haven't made the run this time around. There's still another 3 chances for them to make it into the European RMRs. So there's another 3 qualifiers that are going to go down, and so there's still opportunities. It's just interesting to see how bloody cutthroat some of these best of ones are in the online space, and just how it can go against you, even if you are a team with amazing resources like Astralis.
This is why, unfortunately, the online era has made it even more unfair for Europeans, because the European RMR, to even get into Bloodbath, then when you get in, it's almost like a mini major itself. Then you go and you look at those other regions, and man, the idea, like we had that conversation a few back about the Oceanic one, like, how are you even asking for more, for fuck's sake? You're already getting an easy ride there. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like you're getting it's like charity or something, you know, where
Yeah, it is.
spots. Because when it comes time to actually do it the major, I mean, the thing is, like, obviously, if I'm proven wrong, terrific in that sense, because then, okay, yeah, if there's an Asian team that comes out and all of a sudden they are able to actually take it to the European teams, the CIS teams, and win, oh, well, okay, then that's interesting. That'll be a new development. But as it stands and how it's been for years, it's just like, that's just not the case. It's still one of those spots where once they get to the big time and actually get to the big show, they usually go out first round, and that's just it. So you could have potentially had another CIS team in there, another European team, a more competitive team, and not given up that spot just for the sake of giving opportunities to other teams where you're hoping to develop the scenes there, right? Well, I think we do actually, let me see, I'm just keeping tabs on time. We should probably actually start zeroing in a little bit on Blast and some of these roster changes, because that is obviously like the big tournament that's kicking off this week. Everybody's looking at it. I mean, I'm already a little sad just because of this Simple news that's coming out, because I was really hoping that we would have some kind of going deep sort of rematch sort of scenario, or at least to get to see them dominate their group. But now it's actually going to make Group B way more sketch if Simple isn't going to be in it, because that's G2, that's Liquid, that's Complexity, and that's Na'Vi. I mean, Na'Vi got Complexity right off the bat, which even without Simple, it should be a team that they can handle. But then now you're going to go up against G2 or Liquid. Like that's going to be a really weird upper bracket final already for Na'Vi. So I mean, kind of skipping ahead here, but yeah, let's just talk about Group B right off the bat. Like, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. Na'Vi take out Complexity, so they're going to be in the upper bracket final. I think that you kind of have to take. But G2
Here's
Liquid,
the discussion about that, because the only thing to say about that is this is how bad a situation Complexity is in. Sure. Even taking the best player in the world out of the other team doesn't in any way make me conceive of a way you can win this game. No. That means your team fucked up. Like, true, yeah, I mean, Na'Vi has amazing firepower
in the West. You know, like that's you can't. I mean, you know, he's got the Pit Vipers, he's got the mullet, he's got the look, but I don't think he has the op. I don't think he has the op to go up against a team like Na'Vi.
No, the problem with that team as well is it's just busted. Like, it just never worked. It never worked from the beginning, and it hasn't worked since. Even though on paper it still looks like there's potential, it's never manifested in the surface. So yeah, that was a loss already. But that's the thing though, Sembler. I go the other way on this one. I actually think Na'Vi's locked out. They've managed to get a group where you've got Team Liquid with the Yakindar. By the way, that's already not some like world beater. It's had some games that were good. It's had some games where they lost to fucking the guys from, what the fuck was that Spanish team? Movistar Riders, there you go. They lost to them on land. So we already know that's not like some world beater. And then G2's got a brand new lineup. Like, look, yes, G2, I actually think they'll probably hit the ground running and be really good, but they can also just fail in their first couple of maps and blow it. So actually, maybe if you're Na'Vi, this is one of the groups you can actually maybe even steal the group, even with this bullshit. And then also, remember, because the format is so forgiving, and even coming fourth, you still get to play the series. For Na'Vi, they're one of the only teams, because of how crazy the firepower is. I don't think it actually even matters if they come fourth. Like, just like they did shit in the Blast at the beginning of this year, if people remember. They could come fourth and still qualify easily because they're just so good. They have to just win the last match.
When you get into the play-in stage, I believe that's all best of three, right? Yeah, that is all best of three.
It's what would piss me off. This is why I don't like Simple missing. Because what could happen is this, Sembler. Imagine Simple doesn't play the group stage, but then he comes back for those play-in stage, right? Now imagine I did really well. Now I finished second in my group, and I have to play against Na'Vi because they maybe finished second or third in their group in my like decider match to get into Blast. How's that fair? The fuck is that? And then you bring Simple back in. The fuck is this? That's like some WWE shit. Like, oh, I can win this match. Whose music is that? Sting? Oh my god! He's doing the pin drop.
No, if it's
actually
Simple,
the pin drop's what they.
You
know what? Do you know the pin drop? That's actually the name that Simple calls it when he puts his head on the pillow to go to sleep at night. So, there you go.
Okay.
Keep thinking about it.
So I like the Blast, the way that if you just take it at a glance, I kind of feel the same way about Group C as well, though, with FaZe, where it's just like I don't see a team in this group, like these groups, at least Group B and Group C, a full strength Na'Vi. You know, I mean, even a half strength Na'Vi, I feel like are the teams that are going to be comfortable in this group, should be comfortable in this group. But like Group C, I'm looking at it, I'm just like, dude, it's FaZe versus EG to kick it off. EG I mean, they brought Rush back in to replace Automatic for this event, but it's still not, you're still thinking the same thing where it's just like, there's no way EG are going to be able to take a team like FaZe in the first round. I mean, maybe best of one, but even then. But then you have Heroic and Big as well. Same thing. Like, I don't feel like either of those teams is going to have the firepower necessary to take on FaZe when FaZe are getting warmed up and ready to go. But
I think they can. Look, they can. Those teams. Here's the thing: Heroic can just match them straight up. I think they actually have a chance in the BO1. They have a decent map pool. The big one's the interesting one because I've noticed this with Big. If anyone watches, you'll notice I often do a lot of underdog bets on Big, but in very key points. Because I've noticed with Big, they're actually slightly, because they are like a tactical team and they do seem like they put a lot of practice in. They're actually like slightly better than the level of their team. Like the raw firepower is not too crazy, but I've noticed anytime you think they're a total underdog, they actually have a chance. It's only once they get good and the Mauis of the world are like, maybe they can be top 5. That's when you've just listen. Then you are then off with Puff the Magic Dragon, just smoking some 70s era fucking Cheech and Chong weed at that point in time. Like, yeah, that's delusional. But in matches like this, like pretty soon they have a cheeky chance to beat Heroic here. If they played FaZe, obviously at the Rubek Cup, they played them and beat. Like, it's not impossible. Some of these things can happen. Obviously, they're outsider, but, you know, because the thing about FaZe I always think people overrate is this. When they're at their peak level and they win, they still don't smash everyone. Like, they're actually a team that need, like, a lot of things to happen on the same time. Now, I will say they're amazing that the amount of times their stars can all perform at the same time is very impressive. But there's a reason why they had those couple of lands where they didn't do as well. Like, I think they can also be a team that can dip. The difference is Na'Vi at full strength. Like, I just think the firepower is impossible. FaZe, you can get lucky, get them on the right map, or someone's having an off day. Or
tournament format, though, to like come back from a break on, because now you've had like 2 or 3 weeks, you know, maybe you've been on vacation, partying it up, but you know, how long have you had a boot camp coming into this, you know, 2-3 days maybe to just shake the rust off, and you're going to get back into the match, and then you come into basically the tournament with the most forgiving format ever, where you just have opportunity on opportunity to stay in the tournament and keep fighting through until you get into the next stage. So, I mean, like, it is actually a perfect environment. One, Na'Vi, that's what we used to always say about Na'Vi, is that they start cold and maybe they're going to get knocked down to the lower bracket, but the longer the tournament goes, the more they power up. Do you think FaZe have that same quality where it's just like maybe they start off a little cold, maybe it's going to be a little dicey, but if they can keep like as the tournament progresses, they're just going to keep getting more and more dangerous?
Yeah, the thing with FaZe to me is I actually think because of the fact that they seem to almost thrive off like the big game and playing the best teams and being in like clutch matches. Because if you notice, that's why I always say they're like Fnatic 2015. They are a team that seem to like rise to the occasion now. Well, the thing about that is those are the teams, similar, where if they're going to lose, they're going to get beaten early in a tournament. You know what I mean? Like someone's going to catch you early before you get going, before you revved up, because you're going to think, as long as we keep going, as long as no one stops us now, eventually we're going to come online at some point in time. So I think for me, if they get locked out, it'd be in like that playing stage part. Like I could see a team potentially, like obviously there's a world where I'm just looking at who the other teams are. Let's say they won or came second in their group. They could play against someone like, I mean, they could obviously play against anyone. They could play against Na'Vi at full strength in a match. You could have to play against Liquids or, yeah, I think FaZe in general, look, I don't ever worry about them. I think their team does, because they do it by committee, I think it makes them a fairly consistent team. It's just they also don't have the simple guy who can just win the game every time for you. So I think they certainly can be upset. What now?
Sorry?
Other group?
Yeah, other group. We're going to move into another group. I got sidetracked there for a second. Something caught my eye. $70 million raised for teams at the last major. Have you heard that news?
I mean, if you look there, they just, I think, mean from stuff like stickers and all that shit.
Sure. But all of a sudden, it's like if running a major is netting for everybody involved, right? If stickers are making 70 mil, or is that just the cut for the players? Like,
here's the problem. The stickers thing will always be worthless because all people do is give an absolute number and then fans just speculate, oh, so everyone gets an equal share. That's like 7.8. And here's what they don't know. I've heard from stickers, it works like this. First of all, it's what capsule you're in. So like if you're in the same capsule with Na'Vi, every fan of Na'Vi who buys the capsule buys your sticker. Boom, already get her. Secondly, the RMR defines it because the RMR puts you in which capsule. And are you in the Legends capsule with Na'Vi and with FaZe? Or are you in the Bombfuck new challenger capsule or whatever that has all the shitters like ones that you wouldn't care about, like fucking Bad News Eagles or something? So I've heard already there's elements that aren't in your control always that affect like how much you get. And then also, like I say, there's this shit of like who knows how it's divided up. So the real problem is that number, it's no one can really know who gets how much of what of that unless you're basically the number one team, as far as I can tell.
This is a number that is really interesting because there's definitely that in terms of like how much the players and the teams earn, but from a organization perspective, all of a sudden that means depending on what cut you get as an org for actually running the event. Now, if those are the kinds
their cut's very low nowadays, though.
Sorry.
I've heard that the cut that the orgs get is very low nowadays. That's part of what the players negotiate.
Yeah, sure. The teams, but like the tournament organizer. All of a sudden, if a PGL,
the tournament organizer gets, as far as I know, they don't get any money, do they?
No, I think they do. I think they do get a cut off of that money. I think that's what, like, this is how, if we're talking these kinds of numbers, this is how I can understand why Sylvia would say, like, from PGL, saying that it's profitable to run a major now. Because if you're talking about $70 million and you're getting a cut of that as the tournament organizer, I mean, you could be talking about millions of dollars all of a sudden on top of the sponsorships and everything else, the ticket sales, the sponsorships.
Yeah, here's the problem, though.
For that event.
Here's the problem, Samla. You can't compare the margins in the ledger of PGL with ESL, who are their main competitor for majors. Sure. ESL is going to have, like, off the top, they're going to have 2 or 3 times more staff just doing those same jobs. The people like PGL, they're like the CIS companies. They will have one guy do 2 jobs or just work 20 hours or work like TI into the major and just work like 8 weeks in a row. Like, they'll do stuff like that. And as a result, guess what? It's like the joke is this, sadly. You know that old joke people used to have about like Egypt? Like, yeah, it proves you can do anything if you just have access to unlimited slave power. Like, right. Yeah, you can build whatever you wanted. Like, the joke is that's all. Like, PGL, when they say then that they're making money, like, the first thing I think, by the way, is don't you and me want to go back in time before PGL Stockholm and maybe not give them the mates rate? No. The fuck was that? Mate, if I could go back in time, you're getting my top rate. What the fuck? You're going to tell me you're making money off this event? Motherfucker.
That's
By the way, that's also where I'm actually on a level that some people will never arrive at, Samla. I'm on the level where I can be called up by the man who owns the company that runs the major to apologise to me for what happened in the last major, and I'll even just go, look what the cat dragged in. Exactly. Because that's one thing I sort of don't believe it, Sam. I don't really believe you can make money ruin a major.
No, this is the thing. If no, I didn't believe that either. If it was the low millions or whatever. But if we're talking, if Valve themselves are coming out and saying that $70 million were raised through stickers for professional organizations, teams, and players, professional organizations can be team owners or tournament organizers as well. So it's like, if that kind of money is at play, all of a sudden it's like ESL, PGL, doesn't matter where you're based. If you're dealing with millions of dollars off of a cut for your event, like, okay, I could see why maybe Blast is actually for the first time trying to make a play to get a major. Because if that's the kind of money in play, then maybe all of a sudden it is worthwhile to actually try and run one instead of it just being a massive cost. Maybe you're actually making some scratch. Like that totally changes.
An angle for you. Here's an angle for you. Even though I would actually hate this, like, as someone, Sambler, who has paid in taxes each year more than most people in this Twitch chat will make fucking, like, total without tax. That's a flex and a half on all of you, but it's true. As someone who's done that, I don't particularly want that tax money being frivolously spent on fucking esports tournaments. I'd like to choose if that money of mine gets spent on that or not. But I will say this, Sembler, I do think the future, and someone like Blast would be right in line for this, the future is this. You know how in the NFL, there are all those complaints where a city will be like, we want an NFL franchise to move to our city. And what happens is the NFL franchise goes, right, you will provide us with a top-of-the-line stadium, you will build the whole thing, then you will give it to us and we will make money off that. Now, what they always argue politically is obviously, but it'll be create jobs in the area and all that. But what they're really telling you is, all you people who work back-breaking jobs, yeah, your tax money is going to fund this fucking billionaire having this massive sports stadium, and then he's going to choose this place instead of another. And I don't know why they do it, because if you don't do that stuff, he will go to the state that does do that, and that is what will attract them. Well, similarly, that's what I think the future will be in esports, Sembler, is if you know it makes a load of money like this, but the margins are still slim, then what you do is you go, if you're Blast, to the Danish government and you tell them, we're bidding right now for a world championship. You know how, like, Macron just said he wants world championships in France, and obviously they're going to happen in the Middle East now with these sponsors. Well, if you were somehow to arrange, or maybe you could use the taxpayers' money to pay for the costs, what if you just gave me the Royal Arena to use and I didn't have to pay for it? Then my margins would be very different. I could go back and I could bid aggressively for this major, and then we'll have a world championship in Denmark. Spoiler, if you know how sports works, that's going to happen eventually. That'll be the way it goes. Like, they'll have access to that sort of funding.
They, I mean, that the city build. That's how they do it. They subsidize. It'll
become a thing, yeah. Of course.
They subsidize. They promote across the city, and that's. But one of Blast's biggest supporters is literally the state, the Danish state, in terms of taxes. So you're right. You're on. I see where you're going on that line.
To me, it's just whether it's like a logical way that we could have more people do majors, and it's a way that if you want that specific location, people have to play ball, right?
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the major things. Like the word around the campfire was that the PGA, Antwerp only happened in Antwerp because it was like one of the only arenas that was available at the time, just due to booking. It was almost like that dumb. Like they were just like, well, we could do, we. It's like the options were there, and that was like there weren't that many arenas that were even available short notice, and so it just wound up in Antwerp. Comically, right? So if you were to actually have a marketing team or a sales team that was actually out there hunting down different cities and trying to find the best deals subsidy wise in terms of like investment, then yeah, that would be a totally different picture. But all right, that was a little bit of a tangent. What do you think about Group A on this this Blast team? Because like Vitality, OG, Nip, Astralis. I mean, we haven't really talked about the Vitality. The Vitality sort of scenario now that Spinks has actually been announced. So it's Apex, ZywOo, Dupree, Magisk, Spinks as the full 5-man roster for Vitality. Zonic's still the big man coach behind him. It looks like Neymar is going to be getting him water as well between matches. What do you think about this this Vitality roster? Do you think that this is it? It's got the firepower necessary?
I mean, it does. Like, this is a super team. Let's be real. Every player on this list has either been a top 20 player or might be in the future. Like, I think Spinks will be this year. So they'll have a team where all 5 players at one point were like star players in the world. So already their firepower you should expect to be very good. Remember, because Spinks was one of the best riflers in the world, and you already had ZywOo, who I don't care what people say. Yes, he has slumped in certain tournaments. He is still a fucking amazing player who can take over plenty of gear. So if you have him and Spinks, here's the good news. The pressure on Magisk and Dupree is just being unloaded like a motherfucker. They just have to be role players now, mate. If they can just do their jobs as like some sort of a support, like lurker, anchor, and an entry player, they can. The whole world is theirs. And now Apex only has to IGL. It's not even like the old Apex where it's like, right, you have to run through a brick wall and get 25 kills a map. Like, he didn't have to do that at all. It's just an IGL, mate, and be part of the pack, probably. So I actually think this is a great signing. I think for me, this is a good example of where someone has made the correct move, which saves a roster. If you had to toss most of this roster, you would have wasted so much money. Now, obviously, you can do the classic move of throwing good money after bad. This is throwing good money and turning the bad into good. Like, I actually think this signing could save this whole super team project. Because I think Spinks is mega. The problem I have, there's one angle that I'm skeptical though, which is this. I do suspect that he probably, a la the example of Monacy and Navi, was the man in Ents and had everything tailored to him and all his spots and all the resources. You aren't going to get that in Vitality as much because of ZywOo alone. So you gotta learn. You're coming in at the bottom of the totem pole. You don't have the same status as all the other players. But if they can create the right space and role, this guy is really good. So I actually think it's his chance to win tournaments now. It's Vitality's chance to go to #1. Spinks and ZywOo is a hell of a fucking combo if it works. So I'm very excited to see this lineup play.
To me, I'm on board with you on that front in terms of like Spinks and ZywOo. Those guys are like proven elements. It still feels like the big question mark revolves around the Danes on the roster, Dupree and Magisk, and whether or not they're going to be able to get comfortable and actually step up and have those kinds of star performances that they've had in the past. Because it always feels like I'm left wanting more from those guys when I watch Vitality. So it's like, what is the intangible thing that's stopping them from actually being able to get the results? Because they still have their coach behind them as well. It's like it's still Zonic back there. If anybody should be able to get that kind of performance out of these two players, it should be him, right? So it feels like it's been a little bit of a disappointing turn of events just on that level, because to me, Dupree is always going to be just a total monster. We just need to see more of that from him instead of less. I needed to see something actually here. Real quick.
What are you looking for?
No, it's just tragic. Yeah, I was just trying to bring up Dupree's ratings now because I couldn't remember them off the top of my head. But
it's pretty pedestrian. It's not terrible, but it's very pedestrian.
It's like he's definitely, the last 3 events have definitely been a pretty hard drop off back into like just average, right? Not anything that's really just taken over. It still feels like this Vitality team is looking for their identity. But at least they're making a play now. Spinks bringing on to, could be more of that firepower that's actually going to be able to make up for Misuda, not really having that star level kind of element to bring. So now Apex, ZywOo. Man, it's just ZywOo is still the X factor. Like if you have ZywOo on your team, you should still be able to just win regardless of who's in front of you. So do you think like this is kind of the question that I've always wondered, and it feels weird because I feel like I'm seeing it again with Xtaz on G2, where he's not necessarily putting, let's say, you don't want your stars necessarily to be self-effacing either, and so taking the pressure off of Nico, or saying like, oh, Nico doesn't do these things, or how to phrase this, like, can you get it in the position now where it's like, okay, ZywOo, actually, you are the star, and instead of you being like, oh, just another teammate, it's like you are now the star, and we're going to give you more resources, so go be the star, right? Instead of trying to reel it back and say like, oh no, you're just like the other players, you're nothing special.
I mean, I'll tell you a reason that shouldn't be acceptable already. Like, just go look how much these guys earn. As soon as you pay ZywOo what Masuta makes, then ZywOo can have the same little breaks that Masuta gets. But if you get paid essentially like Cristiano Ronaldo money in your team, you better be Cristiano Ronaldo and score those fucking goals for me. That's the only reason I've signed you. Like, I'll give you a story. One time, if people remember famously, Charles Barkley's run to the NBA Finals when he joined the Phoenix Suns. It was actually the first season he joined. They went straight to the finals. When he joined that team, the guy who signed him, this guy, I forget his name, Cotton something or other. This guy said to Charles Barkley, look, in this stadium here, right? We've been in playoffs before. We're signing you to hang a banner, mate. You're here to win the championship. That's why we signed you. That's actually what the expectation should be when you're Nico or ZywOo, this level of player. Like, you aren't there just to be a part of the team. We're not paying you to like part of the team. We're paying you to be the best player in the world and be the best player in our team. So I agree. That's why I hate this angle, like the Nico angle. There's a similar one with ZywOo. People say with ZywOo, oh, the thing about ZywOo is he's just such a nice guy. He's happy to create space for his teammates. He's happy to give up a spot, or he's happy to give up the AWP to Nivera. He shouldn't be happy. He's the star player. I need him first and foremost, just like Nico. Tell me what you need to get your shit together. Now, once you've got your game fixed, I'll take care of the rest. Don't worry about them. If you're fragging out like Nico can, you're fragging out like ZywOo can, I'll handle the others. Don't worry about that. That's my job as a coach. I just need you right. So you tell me what you need. What are we not giving you? What are we not? Because here's the problem as well. When you do that, when you let people go, I'm just a player. It's what Device did to me for years. And spoiler, this is when Device didn't win any majors. This is when he didn't get to be the #1 player in the world, because he made himself just another player. But as I used to tell him back then, the reason you can't tell me you're just a player is because Zipnix can't pick up the AWP and do a 3K that beats an IP, mate. Only you can do that. So in this scenario, you're actually literally like avoiding your responsibility. Your responsibility is that you're here to be my best player. I want you to do everything you need to take over this game. I don't want you to shirk back and go, yeah, you win as a team, you lose as a team. I want you to go, no, I actually won. By the way, you guys were going to lose me this game. I fucking made us win this. So next time, give me what I want. That's what I want, yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of NIP, I mean, they're in the same group. They're on the other side of the bracket going up against Astralis, who just...
This group is all over the place, by the way. Like, I'm not joking. Almost any combo of these teams could actually get out of this group. Because remember, the OG teams had some upgrades. Like, this group is wild, I think.
Yeah. I mean, okay, but like, what do you think about this NIP roster? Because like, feels like the sword of Damocles has finally been lifted above their heads. Like it's like Hampus has come out in an interview on Fragbite recently saying that there's no doubt now, like Device is not coming back and they're going to play with this roster for Rio. So it's like, at least in the short term, we know the Device isn't coming back, that this is going to be the roster. But I saw you popping off the other day on Twitter. I mean, again, it's just so unreasonable, this situation. Like every stream you start, every day you have somebody asking about Device. Like, where's Device? What's Device? Like, do we have any information on Device? And the answer continues to be no, we don't actually know anything about him. Like, what is going on, apart from the fact that I guess he no longer lives in Stockholm. He moved back to Copenhagen, and I can only speculate that he wants to get back on Astralis. But like, that's literally the point that we're at right now. Like, we have no information on Device, but at least we know now that this is going to be the NIP roster. Rez, Plopsky, Hampus, Esatag, and Brolan. Like, this is going to be the NIP roster going forward, at least for the foreseeable future. So, I mean, it sounds to me like you think that this is a team that can actually do some work here and get some work done.
I mean, I think they're a good team anyway. Like, I actually, I wouldn't say they're overrated because no one ever seems to put them up there. But the problem I have is this. They do seem to have a ceiling. Like, I noticed this team doesn't ever go to a final, doesn't ever win a tournament. But here's the difference. They're the team where, as you've seen, I mean, the Major proved this. If they were to play the #1 team in like the quarterfinals, though, they'll have a crack at it. Like they could be in this game. They could win it. Like, I think their rifle core is pretty good. I actually think they've even somewhat fixed the system of the team. I don't know what Hampus did or what the coach staff did, the DJL guy or whatever it is called. Whatever they've done, it seems like they've turned it around. The problem they have is they do lack an AWPer, just like a Device. Like, Estag ain't getting it done in that sense. That's one problem. True, there's not that many amazing AWPers right now, so they're sort of getting away with it. But I do think that's like something capping them out. And then on the other side of the equation, on the Device side, here's the problem. When I said that way back, or when Richard was the other co-host, that like the rumor after the last major was Valde and Device go to Astralis, right? already that's not the case because, spoiler, Valdez going to ENCE. So that part of the deal's already broken down. And there has been, since then, no further rumours behind the scenes about Device until very recently. Now, I'm not breaking this story. I won't even say who whiz. You'll just see it in the next couple of days. But I have heard that one of the legit journalism sources I use, that Device apparently is talking to teams potentially. So maybe, I don't know if it's Astralis, so I don't know where he's going to go, but it sounds like maybe there is a return. Maybe there is finally something's happening more than just, he's in FPL playing a park. Like, finally, there's more than that at least. So it sounds to me like something might get resolved. I have no idea if that means he joins Astralis. That would certainly tie in with like the recent like Smooya vague thing he said on stream about like maybe Astralis had a different player coming in. The problem with that is, spoiler, Smooya's like the Overdrives of the world. They just throw shit at a wall and hope some of it sticks and then go, say, I told you. And you go, no, mate, you didn't tell me. You told me stuff like fucking like Tabson and Gobby were joining G2. You didn't tell me all those other things. You just throw shit at a wall and then pretend the rest of the sliding off's just like sort of a fucking moving landscape painting or something, collage. Like, fuck you.
It's an Anders prediction game.
Yeah, exactly. So it's exactly what it is. Exactly. And by the way, that's the joke of why Anders does it. He does it so that he can go, I called them IBR to beat this team in this team. Yeah, exactly. He does it for that, but he does it with a smirk. Like, these people pretend like it's real. And the joke is they're probably nominated for Journalist of the Year, like me, right? So I think, there's definitely some fuckery there. What I would say overall with this move is, like, I think NIP is okay as it is. But I do think it's underwhelming because I also do think if you could add one more good piece, I don't know if it needs to be like a really good AWP, if it's a different IGL. I still feel like if you add one piece, this team could genuinely be like battling for the title. They could be like a major contender.
Okay.
They've got a pretty nice little rifle core there. If you think about that, add up the players, they've got a pretty canny little team.
Brolan has always been a real threat. I just feel like he needs to find a home that can actually build on it. And he wants to play with a Swedish team. He's unapologetically said that in the past. He doesn't want to go international. He wants to play Swedish. So this is his chance to really just shine. So Brolan should have everything going for him. I feel like threats behind the scenes as well. He should have a good idea of how to get those guys to actually perform well. Rez also seems to be coming up in spades lately as well on his side of things, which is awesome to see because, I mean, it really feels like he's been. I mean, that's the funny thing about Rez. He's been around for a long time now on NIP. This is not a.
Do you want to know the joke, Samler? Because if you've ever watched this show, it was a famous trend we always talked about, right? Okay. Richard particularly, it was literally Richard. You mean it was Richard all along? Always was. Like, the joke is Richard is the guy who, because he was so impressed by Rez at IEM Auckland 2017 or whatever it was, he did reference that a million times about Rez because Rez is one of his favourite players. So famously last year, when they did that run through the RMR, the actual LAN qualifier, when they were able to win it and they came to number 2 in the world, he actually was sort of overhyping Rez a bit. Like, every time at the match, he'd be like, Rez has to turn up. Now, the joke was similar. Last year, everyone was overhyping Rez off like the odd performance, and he wasn't at the old level. The joke is when they finally stopped, when like the rest of us were like, look, they're not doing that, stop saying that storyline, that actually did become a real storyline. If you actually look this year, dude, Rez has had a whole bunch of months where he was really good, actually. Like, he actually does seem to have turned his whole game around. So that story is legit now. He is actually a really good rifler again, yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, he had Katowice where he really did well.
Remember, fans, not everyone has a memory like I do. What happens with a lot of people is they get like an image stuck in their mind of someone in a certain way and they're that player forever. So I'll give you an example just to be fair. If you've ever heard Moses on any podcasts, if Moses was to mention the player Phelps, you all know he would instantly reference that one game we all remember from when he was in Immortals and he went through the murder hole on fucking Mirage T-side. Like, the problem is, though, Moses referenced it too many times, so as soon as he says Phelps, you know what's coming. You go, and then he'd say the line, Bart, and then he'd Moses, and through the murder. I think if they were a player in Mirage, he might be dangerous around the murder. That I don't blame these guys. What you don't know if you're a fan is, essentially, when we have these convos, we're asked at any moment at the drop of a hat to have an opinion about any player in any context in history, any team matching up. There's too much for a lot of people. So anyway, it's not a big diss by the way. In the same way as Richard also did point out, like, he thought saying to replace Rain with JKS was stupid, whereas obviously that was one of my takes, wasn't it? So we all have hot takes. They're
all out there. There's the opportunities. There's definitely there. It's definitely there. What about, the ones that are the big roster changes? Because, I mean, we do have Astralis in there, but I feel like Astralis right now are kind of a known quantity. I mean, Firelike was on the team now, but that's pretty much it. Like, Config and BlameF, we look to them to really do the heavy lifting on the team. But OG, They are the other team in this group, Group A, and they're the ones, Flames is still there, and Nexa's now in, but now you have Neofrag, Fiku, and Dexter's the big pickup, where it really feels like he was out on the market and some opportunities missed from other higher ranked teams.
Wild, yeah.
And the OG are the ones who actually managed to get this guy on the roster. So, like, Dexter is a freak of nature. That guy can just take over servers if he wants to. And I really like the Flames' attitude. I feel like he is definitely a guy who can get some work done. So, what do you think about this this OG roster and their odds here? What do you think of this the shape they're in?
Like, I do think these pickups are good. I think these were the right ones. Like, the Neofrag guy was the other really good rifler in the team, along with Oscar when they were in Sinners, and they were a team that was on the rise at the time. Dexter, I think it's just one of the most eligible, like, star AWPers we've had in years. So the idea he ended up on OG, I don't even know how that happened. Like, that makes me wonder if other teams were, like, pulling out, or you've seen in interviews, he himself implied maybe he was very careful about where he wanted to play or what sort of team. So
Serbia is what it was. One of the.
So to me, I almost feel like, just like with your Kindata team Liquid, there's no way these are the first choice guys. Like, this is what happened. This is like your safety school when you're trying to go to college or something. Like, you're not going to this place first, mate. This is where you go when the first two offers you really wanted turn you down. You just go to one that's all right, innit? So I actually think Dexter is mad overqualified to be an OG. Like, the joke I made about Alexi B before was like, can Alexi B just join OG again? He actually would have fucking players to use now. Before it was just him and a bunch of pieces of string and buttons out of someone's pocket and players who never were anything. So I actually think this team is way more dangerous now. I don't know how well Nexus can IGL it. I'm still waiting to see that myself. But I think in terms of war firepower, this sort of tournament, they're purposely designed for. Like, it's BO1s. All you need to go in is just have a DM, get a bunch of people, Dexter, Neofrag, frag out, suddenly you win the game. Like, I actually think this, like, I don't think they can be like a team that has big placings, but I think they can pull a bunch of upsets out. I think it could be a really dangerous, like, single match team.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's got some potential. I'm looking at Flames' stats right now, and actually, he's popping off as well. So if you can actually go deeper than Neofrag and Dexter, you can start reaching down into Flames as well to start doing some heavy lifting. Looks like he's been popping off already on this road to on the RMR European RMR. So that's cool to see that he's in shape. I mean, it's just it's a team I think that's going to be really exciting to watch, just because you don't have like those old hand veterans on this team anymore. These are the upstarts. These are the young guns who are going to try and make names for themselves. It's going to be exciting to watch and follow their story, because I mean, Nexa's been around now, I guess, but you don't really look to Nexa as like a veteran in the scene. So even he is going to be looking to prove himself as an IGL to show that, hey, I can
redeem himself,
job done as well, and that I have a system that works. I know how I want the game to be played, and I can get players around me to buy into that system and actually execute it as well on the server. So like, it's actually really sick to see that OG have actually managed to make the cut here and are going to be able to have an interesting 5-man roster to watch. Wow, it bodes well. It bodes well for the future. It gives me way more hope than teams like EG or Complexity right now in the other groups. If we want to go on like the 4 seeds of the groups, Complexity and EG are definitely bottom of the pack right now, and we can go from there. Don't know what Stan needs to do to get back on that main roster, but
invent a time machine.
A time machine to go back in time, yeah, basically. Quick predictions, though. Do you want to do like quick predictions?
Yeah, if you want.
Because like Group A. I mean, you have to go with Vitality over OG. Even if we have bigged up OG, I don't think that OG get the upset there. I think OG are going to be, I think it'll be Nip over Astralis. I think Vitality will take OG, but then I think it's OG over Astralis in the lower bracket. I'm willing to go that far. And then Vitality, Nip, playing it out all the way. We go the distance.
It's a 50-50, I reckon.
Dude, that's a 50-50. Yeah, I'm like, I almost want to say the Swedes in this one, because Vitality, if they add Spinks in, it's going to be a new roster. They may be trying to change things, maybe getting guys comfortable. Whereas Nip, I feel like this is a roster that they should be pretty tight on right now. They should be able to do well. I may put Nip as the upset over that one in that 50-50 and just say Nip take it and go into the grand final match, and Vitality will run it back through the lower bracket. But like, what do you think? Does that sound about right for you?
I think that's plausible. Yeah, that's probably how I handled it.
Group B, Navi Complexity, G2 Liquid. Also, I mean,
obviously it matters if Simple plays or not. If Simple plays, I would assume Navi wins. If Simple doesn't play, I think I would probably pick G2.
And it's worth mentioning that we do have our sponsor, esportsbet.io. Go and check them out as well. So going through these kinds of predictions, This is the kind of fun stuff that we like to do, and all, big thanks to them for supporting the show. And worth reminding you all as well, if you've made it this far, leave us a review on Spotify or on iTunes. It definitely helps, even if it's a one-word comment. I mean, anything to get the algo going. The algo gods are greedy gods. They require some kind of sign. So if you leave a review, leave a star, leave anything like that, thumbs up, that obviously helps. So we appreciate if you're listening there. And
also, by the way, on this channel, on YouTube or on Twitch, like yesterday, me and Monty did one of those competitive edge shows that's about these opening matches and which bets I would do and whatever. So if you want to know like specifically what underdog when I bet on, I think the odds, it's in that video there. We're just doing a preview now, obviously.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, check that video out as well if you want the more in-depth side of things. Group B, Navi Complexity, G2 Liquid. What do you got on this one?
I mean, I just think Navi wins the first match no matter what. I would have G2 probably over TL, and then I think G2 might actually just win the group. It depends if Simple's there or not. If Simple's there, I'll take Navi. Otherwise, I'm going to take G2 and just say they hit the ground running.
Okay. And then Complexity fourth, Liquid third behind them?
Yes.
Okay. I like it. I kind of
Again, it depends if Simple plays or not.
If Simple isn't there, then it's a real question of whether or not...
There's a world Liquid could win. It's not impossible.
Electronic and Bit, I mean, they've got firepower. Electronic Bit, Perfecto, like... They've got firepower on that team. They've got a system. Could potentially still work out.
Yeah, but then they would also technically have two stand-ins at the same time. Like SDY's only played like 2 tournaments, so eventually the team's going to break. Eventually, if you keep taking pieces out, there has to be some core of Navi in it.
It is a question of like how much time SDY would have spent with Blade over this break. Like the CIS guys don't take breaks in the same way. Well. Let's say unless you're Simple, but like like the guys actually out there, like I could imagine SDY was a guy who would be really trying to put work in throughout this 3 weeks to get on board with Blade's system, to understand where he needs to improve to really make the system work. I could see him actually having made some progress over the period of the break, but if that's enough to make up for Simple, probably not. All right, Group C, FaZe, EG, Heroic, Big. This one, you actually, I mean, okay, so FaZe over EG, I think that one's fair enough, and I think FaZe do win the group. But Heroic and Big, you were kind of on the fence a little bit on this one in terms of like, who do you think has more firepower? What do you think of this one?
I mean, I explicitly on the competitive egg show said I actually would take the underdog Big. Like, obviously they were the betting underdog. Like, I think they can win this BO1. I think it's a close game though. Like, they're both tactical teams. Both, like, Heroic has a good map pool, but the problem is Heroic also randomly every now and then just dips in level. They don't have like a hard carry player that wins your game no matter what. So I think they're just a team that can be upset, and Big's a canny little upset team, especially in a BO1 in my opinion.
Early on as well, no pressure. Definitely,
yeah, exactly.
Definitely like they can hit the ground running, and Heroic are going to be in that lower bracket final. Then, I mean, I think EG fourth, and then it's going to be a question of whether or not Heroic can bounce back and fight for the second place. I still think FaZe are going to take the first spot, even if it gets a bit dicey, gets a bit close. I feel like FaZe are going to be the team to fight it through and get that grand final spot and get that first seed going into the finals of the play-in stage. Kind of hard to get around that, but this is probably a good place, dude. I mean, like, prediction wise on Blast, that gives us something to go off of, and then we can obviously check and make sure, actually what we'll do is next week we'll just take a look and see like how the predictions played out. But maybe it's a good time to get into questions. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right, because do you want to give the
Just
rundown on how these questions work?
Basically, now we don't use a Patreon anymore. What we do instead is we have like a crypto you can buy called GROGcoin. So if you go to the Insight on Esports Discord server, go to the GROGcoin lounge, there'll be a pinned tweet, explains how you buy it. If you have 25, I think it's 25 GROGcoins, there's a channel called BTN Questions, which someone's going to take the questions from. You can just put your questions there. I will say, just like I said on some of the Insight this week, if you're going to intentionally make the questions like annoying to even ask and they're like way too long, you will eventually. Like, I'm not some fucking whore that's like, Ducky, $5. Like, mate, I'll just throw the $5 back in your face if you tell me to suck your dick. So if the question's really annoying, you will just be removed from this thing. So keep it within bounds, make it funny, keep it fairly concise, and don't make it like 5 paragraphs. So again, this is why you're part of nice things, guys. So as long as people keep it respectful, we can have lots of fun with this.
Yeah, there you go. So go and pick up GROGcoin, and you'll be able to ask some questions as well, and it helps support the show. So go and check it out. But first question then, taking it from the top. Architect of Korean esports-based Joe. What happened to Lol Banelore? He's still around. He's doing his thing. He's helping with the he still handles the edits, and he still gets the edits together basically for the show. Not that we're doing much editing right now. I think it's more about like preparing the VOD and just getting things squared away. But Yeah, Sam's still around. He's
No,
not
the
dead.
problem for them is that obviously Sam used to have he used to basically know when he could like put his mic on and laugh, and it would like add to a lot of the great scenes in like Best of By the Numbers and stuff. The problem with that is he just can't at the moment produce the live show. Like he has a bunch of event work he does. You guys don't need to know. I think it's like white label stuff in esports. He does a bunch of event work basically, so he can edit the VOD, but at the moment he's not available to do the show live. Like I'm actually using the guy who does like the League of Legends stuff for us from the company to do the production of this now, basically. So at this point, like when he doesn't have event work again, as long as we've got the right hookup, we'll bring him back in and he'll come on. But at the moment, he's just not available, unfortunately.
Well, there you go. Next one, Butt Pounder 420. Favorite, most thought-provoking viewer question you've had so far? Oh, that would mean having to remember past questions. Do you have anything on the top of your head? I'm terrible for
See,
shit.
what's funny is a lot of the viewer questions I've noticed are just stuff like, what's your favourite sci-fi book? Which, look, it can be an interesting question. But to me, the more interesting ones are ones where it'd be like, what's like a motto you've lived by in your life? Like, I think stuff like that's interesting. So there's been some that were sort of in that wheelhouse, I think.
Sure.
Or, what was a moment in your life that transformed some bullshit like that,
Yeah, I mean, because it's kind of like when you get questions about like stories that happen behind the scenes, like those are always kind of touch and go because you're really not sure.
You can't tell most of them, unfortunately. All the best ones you can't tell. That's the joke,
yeah, exactly. That's kind of the point of that sort of scenario. And yeah, and like, what are you gonna tell? Like, it's a little bit touch and go. And otherwise, yeah, it is like what's your 5-man roster or something like that. So, we'll work on that, Butt Pounder. We'll work on that. Snake Gold, what has been the most impactful change made to improve viewer experience? What change would you make? What has been the most impactful change made to improve viewer experience? I actually think it's really simple. I think it's X-ray. I think actually having X-ray, because like if you go back and watch,
it didn't exist in 1.6 if people don't know.
If you go back and watch old CS, dude, like if you don't know what's going on, you're as surprised as some of the players are when somebody comes around the corner. It's a totally different viewer experience. It's much harder to follow. Like you actually really have to know what's happening to be able to enjoy watching 1.6 in certain cases, because it's just like it's mystifying. Like it's so hard to observe. Whereas today, like you see through the walls, you can see the players coming. It builds anticipation. You see something happening. It's like it just adds an infinite amount to the broadcast, and it tilts me to no end when they've started doing this again, where they'll toggle X-ray live during a round, and I fucking hate that because it makes me think that somebody died every time. I'm like, shit, there was a fluke that I didn't see, and no, it's just like the observer's like, oh, no, I'm going to toggle it because it's 1vx or whatever. It's like, no, dude, you do that in a replay. You keep the X-ray on. The X-ray is on, and that's it. It's jarring when you turn it off now, unless you know what's happening. But for like a random viewer who's just tuning in, they're gonna be like, "What the fuck? I could see a guy, now I can't see a guy. What happened?" You turn off the X-ray for a replay, but you always just leave the X-ray on during live play. But yeah, I think X-ray is 100% like the most impactful change made to observing CS, bar none, because it just completely changed how you could watch the game and actually follow the game versus needing to know what the strat actually looks like and visualizing it in your head, or just seeing whatever the player is that you happen to be observing at that moment is seeing,
I mean, I would have picked X-ray as well. It's the most obvious one. If not X-ray, then let me think. What else? Here's the thing, I'm not a huge fan of it, but I do think essentially what made CS go from looking like just a video game to like more cinematic was when people figured out it was actually all the people who did the frag movies, but then people in events figured out how to do all those fly-throughs of the map, etc., and have like, when you can come out of spawn, the camera flies through like cinematic style. That does add something to sort of like the professional sheen of the tournament, If it was just in the game only shit, it wouldn't look as cool.
True.
But whatever.
All right, Blaz, if b-hopping was made possible in CSGO, which CS pros do you think would get buffed the most?
I mean, obviously, someone like Forest plays fucking surf maps all the time, so it's going to be someone like that. Obviously, old school Neo had amazing movement. I assume someone like Simple would have fucking sick movement if he wanted to.
JW comes to mind. He always had the most fluid movement. Watching him play, like it was so enjoyable. So like, I think he would just go into overdrive.
I think all the people who were super nerds, like Rops, fucking Nico, these people would all master this. I think they would put mad hours in.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. All right, so Coach Paul, Compared to other major esports, CSGO has generally been inhospitable to coaches who are not former pros. Why is this the case?
Here's the problem. His name's already set him up to get hurt here. So is that the end of the question?
Yeah, go for it.
Right, here we go. I'm going to hurt your feelings now, Coach Paul. The fact that your name's Coach Paul already, here's the problem, mate. You're right. The esports scene is way too close-minded to think anyone who wasn't a former pro could know about the game. But here's the problem, Coach Paul. There are a billion people like you spamming esports teams going, I have coached Little League Baseball. I have been a coach as the third assistant coach on a fucking Div 1 fucking baseball team with the pitching team. And then you act like you're Alex Ferguson. And you're like, well, look, just because I wasn't a top player doesn't mean I couldn't bloody know about the game. I can't do Scottish accents or whatever. You know, like, you're acting like, it's like, here's the analogy, Semler. You know, when I often point out, I'm one of the only people to be very successful at the analyst role in Counter-Strike who wasn't a pro player. That's not my, like, selling point. Like, the reason I'm good isn't because I wasn't a pro. It's because while I wasn't being a pro, I spent my whole life studying the game, watching the game, fucking talking to pros. The point is, I'd used my time differently and built up a different skill stack. What is this guy's skill stack? If the skill stack is just, I've done a bit of real world coaching, then here's the problem. Some of your things might work, but only in a certain circumstance. We can't know you'd be good in CS. So the real problem to me is this. The actual people you want is the order that's logical. You want people who are pros initially because they're the most obvious ones to test. Then you want people who've been around the scene a long time. Maybe they themselves were like a fucking person who was a talent or something like that. Then you want people also who have real life coaching experience, because unfortunately nobody has bridged that gap yet. There aren't real world coaches who've come into esports and been good at coaching. Even people like the fucking Casper Fitz of the world. I've heard about this, obviously the Woodbook guy for League of Legends at TSM. There's a few people they've tried it with. The problem is they tend to just be like boomer style coaches. Like, the joke is they come in, Semler, and they really are just having meetings like, now guys, you get to play it. When you play together, then you know, it's like fucking campfire shit, fucking truisms,
exactly.
You know. Yeah, exactly. So the problem is there's way too many people out there who've done some low-level coaching who think they would just revolutionize the fucking game, and they wouldn't. And by the way, they wouldn't have the ear of the players. They wouldn't know how to get the players buy-in. They would not be respected by the Nicos, the Stewies, the Simples of the world. They would just be told politely to shut up, if not explicitly told to fuck off by exactly these players. So here's the thing. As an abstract point, you're totally right. There's loads of people I think could be amazing at these gigs. The problem is the people who are trying to sort of ride that fucking narrative, they probably shouldn't be hired either. So I think it's a complicated topic, personally. I think CS has got too many specific elements to it that you can't just be a generalized coach, Mel. So I think you also have to be an expert about Counter-Strike, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's why there's so few and far between, actually, of like the good coaches, because you still have coaches, and this isn't a knock on Roban. Roban was a pro as well, so I mean, he definitely has some insight into the game, but he's not known as like a tactical coach who's going to be giving you advice on that front. He's going to be there to support the players. He's going to be more of like a GM role, if anything. And then you have guys like Innershine, etc., who are just straight up analysts who are giving that kind of dope to FaZe. But like, the really good coaches, that's why they get so much attention. That's why guys like Zonic, you know, they get as much attention as they do, because they are so rare, so hard to come by. And the vast majority of coaches, most of the time, it doesn't feel like you're getting that kind of insight. You're getting that kind of level. But at the bare minimum, you're right. You need to have, like, even Roban. You saw what I said there. Like, even Roban, where I'm like, you know, he's not necessarily on the tactical side of things. He was still a pro. Like, he still has that experience.
He was the game leader, mate.
Yeah. So it's like he's still going to be able to give you some insight. He's still going to have that kind of knowledge to transmit, even if perhaps like right now he isn't doing that on a nitty gritty level. You know, he's still going to have something to bring to the table on that front. Not just, you know, that's the thing.
Also, if you're Roban, mate, you don't need to get buy-in. Your buy-in is when Simple was like a 10-year-old kid, you were playing in like the SWC final. Like, there's your buy-in, mate. They grew up watching you. It's like I said on Twitter the other day. Here's what's hilarious, Semler. There's all these pros that to score free internet points will trash me publicly, be like, yeah, get a job, idiot. I'll be like, no one respects starring. And the joke is, Semler, if I ever send these guys over the years a fucking random compliment, privately, they're all like, well, it means so much coming from you specifically. Fuck you. Fuck you, guys. That's what they're like in esports, mate. It's fucking bullshit, isn't it? At all.
It's just the way it is, man. It's fucking crazy. All right.
What's the next question?
Let's see. We're into BZ. What are your thoughts about M4A4 and M4A1 as balancing? Do you think we should strive to make them both viable, or accept one will always be more powerful than the other? Should it be allowed to be swapped in game or even in between rounds?
What's your take?
I think that by definition, like information is key, and so if you can dampen sound and also dampen tracers, like the A1S is always going to be superior. So long as you can eliminate tracers from the picture, being able to spam smoke is always going to be more powerful than the A4, no matter how you cut it. Even like increased rate of fire, like I would still take being able to have like a split second drop on an opponent. I think that makes up for the rate of fire in certain situations. Now, I still felt like in certain, like there were certain positions that you could still have like the A4 and it could be really good, like an anchor position on like B Inferno or something, where it's like sometimes you just need to be able to fucking hold down mouse 1 and hose an area, but then you would need to really increase the rate of fire to make it so that it's like a situational thing where you're actually making a decision right now. Because right now I feel like the stealth from the A1 just outweighs everything else. There's nothing really that the A4 brings to the table that the A1 doesn't do. So do you think they should they should, like, Valve have made it pretty clear that they're always going to be striving to make them both viable. And that's not from like a gun balance kind of thing. It's a purely monetary sort of thing for Valve, where it's just like they want every gun to be viable because every gun then has skins and then they make more money. So that's literally the model that they use to make money for CSGO is selling skins. That's the whole reason why Valve will always try to make every gun viable. It's just so that they can potentially sell more skins. That's the whole thing. Because right now, as it is, it's like you buy an AK skin, you buy an A1 skin, maybe a P250 skin or like a P2000 skin, and like you're good, right? You're set. You got a Glock skin too. You never look at the other guns. So for Valve, that's lost money. That's lost moolah. So for them, it's like, no, we need to figure out how to get the Galil viable, the FAMAS viable, the A4 viable. Like everything needs to be viable so that you can get more money. So they're always going to be striving to make them viable. It's just like how they go about it. I still haven't landed on the perfect solution to be able to get the A4 unless
My
you just
problem is
fire.
Basically, I think it's a disgrace they're two separate guns. It wasn't a separate gun in 1.6. It was like the USP. You can take the silencer off, you can put the silencer on in the same round if you want. So as a result, you can choose when you use it, in what way. And in 1.6, by the way, there was a pretty healthy distribution. People like Forrest, 100% of the time, used the silencer. People like, I don't know, fucking Gore or something from Mouse Sports. Like, there's players that never used the silencer, which I think of another one, maybe Trace from MTW is, I think, a good example, maybe. There was people who never used the silencer, because again, it was about positionally, how do you want to use the gun? The problem I have is they just buff one and nerf the other, and then they just leave it and go, wow, why isn't people using both? Because you've incentivized them to use one and they're professionals trying to win the game, you fucking cunt. Like, that's just the way the game works. So I personally think you should be allowed to have them both buyable within the game, or have them both be the same gun and just swap them around. And I think that ideally both should be viable depending on the circumstances.
It would add to more tactical depth, right? If like you were going to play a Pacific, that's the like the thought process behind it, and kind of like how we were trying to theorize before. It's just that the A1S is so strong now that even if before there was like a slight edge to having the A4, it's outweighed by just how powerful the A1S is now. Being able to spam through smoke without people being able to see where you're shooting from is just so powerful. When pro players are so good at zeroing in on those tracers and just going through the smoke and damaging you, like it's just such an advantage. But like it used to be that you could actually there was a period there, man, I can't specifically remember when, but like where it was kind of like you could kind of go between both of them depending on which position you played on a map on CT side. But for the life of me, I can't specifically remember when when we were making that kind of point. But yeah, no, obviously it would be sick if that could be the case. If you could actually have interchangeability so that you could be more strategic that way. It would be tough for pro teams though. Like on matchmaking, it's kind of a whatever sort of scenario. But like for pro teams, it's like you kind of know. Do you think that factors in on the CT side, that this guy plays A1S and he plays these positions?
Of course. Think about this logically. Imagine you play a banana on Inferno and you use the M4A4 and I swap positions with you. I now have to use your M4A4, otherwise they know it's not you because you're firing a silenced gun. Exactly. So that scenario, you've already made a situation where I actually have a deficit as a CT if I want to just swap a position in. So you can't play mind games with them, as you see. You can't even switch up your spots. Like, maybe I play the spot with M4A1 this round, and next round I play with the silence court in the site or something. You know what I mean? That's why I don't like it. I like the game to provide as many strategical options as possible, and then the player picks it, not Valve. Valve doesn't go, to this month I've decided the silencer one is better. Because the reason I don't like that, by the way, is because think of some great players that are just associated with one of them. So I'll give you an example. Elish was a fucking amazing player with the silencer. Magus was one of the best sprayers ever without the silencer. You know what I mean? Like, depends which player you're talking about. Like, some of them are...
Or when everybody was using A1S, he was just using A4.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, it should be viable for both.
Fair enough. All right. IWD, once again, making an appearance. Semler, will you rapid fire lightning round pick the winners of the first round of the Time Travel LAN matchups to see where you disagree with the Old Boys Club? Okay. 2018-19 Astralis, 2016-17 Gambit. I take, oh man, do I really have to? Okay, so hold on. This is
Not even a question. Why are you deliberating on this? This is the most slam dunk one, isn't it?
No, well, okay.
He's asking you which you would pick out, the Gambit that won the major, Semler, or the best Astralis team ever, and you're deliberating on this one.
Deliberating? Okay, fine. I was thinking for your sake, because this is like a solo question just for me, and I'm gonna have to read this shit out. It's gonna take time. That's why I was just
let me read it out then. Let me find this question. No, we'll do this quickly. He wants you to do it quick.
I'm trying to be like a good co-host, you know.
Right. What? She wants you to do this fast, so I'll just ask you each one of these, right? The Prime Astralis that won the three majors versus the Gambit that won PGL Krakow. Who do you pick?
Yeah, Astralis.
Right. 2013 NIP, so he really means the streak one and all the early era with Flaren versus 2015 NIP with Alu.
No, I still take. Oh man, is this Michaelele fifth? No, is this Michaelele NIP?
No, it's Alu.
It's Alu NIP. Yeah, that's Alu NIP. No.
Okay. Then 2019 Team Liquid, the Grand Slam team, versus the Very Games team that like made semis of the first major.
Yeah, Very Games Titan, the Very Games Titan kind of mix. That Very Games Titan. No, I go with 2019 Liquid.
Right, Luminosity from 2016, so the two majors is SK and Luminosity, versus 2015 Envy, and in that one he means the one that let me double check.
This would have been
this is the one, the Kenny and Apex one from Cluj-Napoca, and also made the final of Cologne.
Okay.
So who are you taking for that one, Luminosity or Envy?
I got to go with Envy on that one.
Like that's already a difference. We did 2016 Luminosity for that. Then you've got 2017 Astralis, so the one that beat Virtus Pro to win E-League, versus last year's Navi. Yeah. And then we have 2014 LDLC, so the one that won DreamHack Winter with the Boost Gates thing, versus 2018 FaZe that lost the Boston Major final. Who are you picking out of those two?
2018 FaZe.
I think we also picked FaZe for that one. 2014 Virtus Pro, so the Katowice winners, but also that lineup obviously lasts forever, versus 2015-16 Navi, which was one that was in the two major finals but lost them with Guardian.
Poor Guardian, dude. I go with the Navi on that one.
I think we went Virtus Pro on that one. 2015 Fnatic against the Cloud9 that won the Boston Major.
2015 Fnatic. This is okay. No, I have to go with Fnatic.
Yeah, there you go. So I think you disagreed on a couple. I think you had Navi over VP and you had Envy over Luminosity. I think those are the only two where you disagreed, though.
I gotta go with Kenny. I mean, I can't dodge on that one, man. Seriously.
All right, next question.
Skizord, what sports or esports, if any, did you ever try to get into but just couldn't do it? MOBAs. I just can't. I tried. I've put literally fucking.
I thought you played loads of Dota, didn't you?
Yeah, LOL, Dota. Like I just
never got into it.
Literally thousands of hours into both of those games, and I just can't. It was always just felt like I was forcing myself.
What don't you get about it? What doesn't sort of click for you?
It feels like I'm just trapped in a prison.
Oh, I know what you mean in that sense.
You know what I mean? Like it's just, and especially Dota, where you can't get out. Like there's no escape. Like you just can't get out. You're there for as long as that game lasts.
Here's what I always tell people. I know this sounds mad because everyone envisions CSGO and they just think of those clips where like someone on voice comms is spamming like slurs at you or something. They think, oh, it's such a toxic game. CSGO is way more lighthearted because here's why. In CSGO, as long as I actually am very cynical, this guy can fuck me on this position. They can lose the other site. I'm still fragging out. I still get a gun every 3 rounds. The reason I always say Dota and League of Legends suck is because when you get in a game where you're behind in the game, and then remember, the opponents in League, they get more money, which turns into stats. In Dota, they get more levels that turns into stats. Like, they're getting more and more powerful as I'm going. So actually, yeah, like you're saying, it's getting, as the game goes worse, it's more and more frustrating. And by the end of the game, the joke is, whereas Simple can carry a game, he wouldn't carry certain games in League or Dota. He would be trapped as well, and he can't do anything against a guy twice as powerful as him. So, yeah, I've always said, those games, like that flow when you play in public is what makes everyone toxic. It's the game. It's not actually the nature of people playing in public and people are all talking. It's the game is frustrating and it makes you automatically hate all your teammates and you actually start to hate the game then. Whereas as I say in CS, I can hate my teammates, but I like the game. I'm loving the game. I'm still fragging out.
That's exactly it. That's the big difference.
I have a similar vibe. Yeah.
CS, the roles are interchangeable. You're not locked into a role. Dota, and it's funny because obviously all the good studio guys were fucking mad into Dota. That's when I put all that time into Dota, was playing with them, but I just couldn't fucking do it for the life of me. I just could not enjoy the game. It always felt like a struggle. It always felt like, I mean, the only way to play that game is to play with mates, and even then, it's not the same as playing CS. Like CS is still just the supreme game in that sense.
What about sports though? Do you have a sport? Because you're not like a super sports guy. Is there any big sports you ever tried to get into you just couldn't get to?
That I tried to get into that I couldn't get into? Surfing. Like I tried getting into surfing, and then I loaned my board to my friend, or no, I left it at his house and it got jacked, and then I just never bought another board. So surfing, but like lived in Los Angeles, had a bunch of friends who were into surfing. I skated everywhere. Like I was always skateboarding everywhere, but I just couldn't get I just couldn't get motivated enough. I guess because I was just far enough away from the beach. I was 3 miles away from the beach. So I was like just far enough away from the beach without a car for it to be a hassle to get there. And so I just never got the bug. Like I just never got bit by the bug. So surfing probably is the one for me. Yeah. That and LA water is fucking cold. So I was like, no, it's fucking miserable.
Here's the two angles I have. So for esports, it's actually going to be a funny one because I did loads of work in this game. I did loads of interviews, and for the interviews, you'd assume I had some level of expertise. It's StarCraft 2, easily. I tried watching loads of that, but the problem is because I come from StarCraft Brood War, it's just a shitter version of the same game. It's just a much more inferior version of the same game. Like it's decided by way more fucking variable factors. You can be way less skilled in winning it. Brood War is like more like a chess game. It's like a slow build up with like certain phases of the game you enter, and then you're heading this far, you're behind there. And there's way more of a chess game. StarCraft 2 is like checkers. You just quickly get up to your 200 supply, you smash two armies into each other, you barely even micro them because the game's just made the AI way too good. Famously, Brood War had super old fucked AI on the pathing. Like, loads of the elements of the tech actually ruined it. You could just build everything with one key. Brood War, you have to have all these control groups. Like, that's why I say the problem is, essentially, Brood War ruined StarCraft for me. I couldn't get into it as a result. I could see it was just an inferior game. And so I just covered that. If people don't know, that's the first esport I full-time covered that I wasn't a massive fan of. That's actually what enabled me to then go to League of Legends, because I obviously wasn't a huge fan of League of Legends either. Then in terms of sports, I'm actually someone, if you notice, who generally likes a lot of the sports. It used to be an easy answer. If we go back in time, like 5 years ago, it was easily American football. I just never got into it at the time. I could never sort of find the way in, and it just seemed boring, quite frankly, the times I'd watched it. Whereas it was the right people explaining what to look for sort of gave me the in there. So instead, I'll just say this. This is very topical right now, Semler, in England in particular, if you know some of the sporting results recently. I have never for 1 second in my life been able to get into women's sports. I don't get what the appeal is. Now, the reason why is this. I don't like tier 2 sports. Like when I watch a sport, I want to watch the best in the world play because they're going to do shit I've never seen before. It's going to blow my mind. It's going to push the sport to a new level. It's going to be the highest. I wouldn't watch like Division 3 football. So why would I watch the women's football team play for England? It's going to be shit, isn't it? So I have to say, sadly, the reason I bring that up, Semler, is because everyone used to agree with me and go, yeah, I would watch it. But because the women's England football team won the Euros, everyone pretended for like a week that they really care and that it was really good. And they were even doing that thing, which they don't get, is the bigotry of low expectations. They would go, That lassie's fucking good. She could play with the Mets. Like, you idiot, you've just invalidated your own thing. You moron. You're supposed to believe they're totally equally legit and that they have to be kept apart to protect them. Like, give me a fucking break. So yeah, the whole thing's just bobkiss. It's nonsense. And probably the worst one of all, because probably the sport that people love the most is tennis, right? Loads of people watch tennis and love women's tennis. I can't buy it. I love men's tennis. The women's tennis is so fucking shit. It is mental. Semler, they can't even top spin the ball. Something Bjorn Borg was doing in the 80s. He was doing it in the 80s. These motherfuckers have had decades of preparation, training. They can watch the men. They can hit with the men. They just can't do it. And then you look, because they can't do topspin, it's like they're playing tennis from 1930, Semler, and everyone else is in 2022. It's mental. And then add in, they don't even play a best of 5 in their Grand Slams. And then they get equal prize money for playing less matches and at a low level. Fuck that noise. Fuck that noise. And by the way, because I know where it went to in women's tennis, that's why I push back against some of the nonsense in female esports. Because it'll be the same thing. Down the line, you'll just be spending billions on this shit and you'll all be lying to yourself going, Giuliano, in many ways, she is as good as Simple. Do you not have eyes, you cunt?
Well, that's the issue. Well, I mean, okay, already you want to go, like, if you want to go down that path, it really is just like all female sports is just subsidized by male sports. And so, because none of them would stand on their own, apart from Funnily
Maybe
enough,
one day female UFC could get there. I feel like that could one day break through, maybe. But even then,
UFC?
they still use cards where they balance it with loads of male fights, of course.
I can't watch female UFC. I just something.
I'm not a big fan myself. I do find it
bugs
actually
me about
repulsive.
it. I just don't like watching like that. I just watching women beat up on each other. So like it's just not my thing. I don't get it.
I mean, I'll even throw in there as well. A thing I hate about the UFC that no one ever brings up, Samuel, isn't even just the violence angle. It's that the obvious way to cheat is to take fucking male hormones. So you're already becoming less of a woman to win a weaver. What are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, this is just fucking nonsense.
No, that's the thing. It's like I think you're on something where it's just most.
I also love how that's like the fucking male feminist take as well. Huh, you guys make me sick. I enjoy watching women getting beaten up as much as men. What a fucking take. Exactly. What a hill to die on. My God. What a hill to die on.
Watch guys because it's supposed to be. It's a safe way to create combat. So it's like you don't expect to see women out there with fucking swords and shields. It's like this is the way that men can get that out in a civilized way, apart from literally going to war. So that's the thing. It's just that. So to see women doing that, to me, it feels weird. But also like it's just you're 100% on the money. It's just like people want to watch competition for the same reason they want to watch any competition. Really, at the end of the day, is they want to watch the very best go at it. And so that's why there are sports that can still work where women excel, like racing, rally car driving. There's apparently like some fucking sick rally car drivers out there that are females. But again, that's like on that physical side. Maybe that's where it goes. Like competitive shooting also apparently is like, guns. Hey, guns are the great equalizer. Like women can shoot.
The other one apparently is like long distance swimming or something. There's some like particular sport that's like some niche one that they're the best in apparently.
So they float better, so they can travel better. They conserve energy, so they can kick ass. Long distance running, same thing. Why am I blanking on her name all of a sudden?
Randy Ward, always running from the truth, done miles and miles. No, who are you talking about?
Fucking sick runner out there right now who's just like this ultra runner, 100-miler, Dowalter. Courtney Dowalter, dude. Total fucking savage, like winning these crazy 100
Is she
miles.
Saudi Arabian? Because I imagine you'd be doing a lot of running if you were.
Dude, over there.
No, in fact, I tell you what, the starter pistol, that's scary over there, I'm telling you.
No, it's just like why aren't people like reasonably? It's difficult on this one because I guess ego gets involved or whatever, right? Or like you're starting to deal with pride or whatever. Like it's kind of tough, and I guess in some cases, in some sports, it's going to be tough where it's just like you have to accept that your sports, like not as many people want to tune into your sports, and you're in fact kind of just surviving off of what could be seen as charity or getting subsidized by the male sport. Like female NBA hasn't done anything in decades. And like nobody watches it. Nobody can name the team. There was a clip going around last week of some like reporter out there interviewing this kid who was wearing the shirt of the team, and she's asking him like, "Oh, are you a fan of this guy?" And he's like, "I don't know what that is." He's wearing the fucking shirt of the team. It's just brutal, man.
Do you want to know how I know people aren't real sport fans of the WNBA, Samuel? Because obviously it's the classic one you're supposed to lie and say you like if you want to pretend you woke, right? Here's what most people don't know. Are you ready? I bet no one ever told you this, even though there's loads of feminists out there. Do you know, Semler, that they use a smaller size ball in the WNBA?
No, I did not know
that.
It's
interesting, isn't it?
It's the hoop lower as well.
You've never heard that, have you? No one's ever told you that detail. Why would someone not tell you that the literal ball you use fundamentally is different? Almost like that'd be an interesting detail.
Like, who's the chick? Who's the one that's locked up right now in Russia? Like she had
Greener, Brittany Griner or something.
Griner, right? And like she's the one where it's just like she's had like 25 dunks in her whole career.
That one is true, by the way. They don't dunk very often, unfortunately. Similarly, because again, the ball's smaller and the other joke is similar. Like the numbers is just so off in their sport, you can't get into it because they'll be like, and it's a career high here, 32 points. You're like, what, dude? That's like a bad game for Kobe. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like. Or they'll be like, the first person to make 5 3-pointers. Like, what? What are you talking about? I'm pretty sure Kenny the Jet Smith can come out of retirement and do that now. What?
It's fucking brutal. I mean, I think it's brutal because if you want to be, I mean, I guess there must be some pushback for like track and field or anything like that. Like track and field, they literally run around in like bikinis and shit.
You ever heard that stat, Semler? I heard this randomly online. You might like this. There was a stat that supposedly of the top 25 world record, like top 25 record shot put throws in women's shot put, okay, all 25 are before the doping rules came in that like stopped the Soviet Union and like China and stuff. All 25.
Okay. And then after
That's
that,
going to be decades. Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck? You know what I mean? So is that
Not
sport
even
essentially just experimental drugs? That's all it is. Like, what practice? The practice is like fucking Powerpuff Girls. Like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what the fuck?
it's like, I mean, female weightlifting, same thing, right? You know, it's just like, okay, they've got to be roided out of their minds to be pulling weight like that and all. I mean, yeah.
By the way, that's the one area I'm actually with people that it's not as big a deal. Is my problem is this. Have you noticed that a lot of the sports that the controversy is in about women competing or trans women and these topics are the sports where everyone behind the scenes, it is an open secret, is doping the fuck out of themselves anyway, and the whole thing's just don't get caught. Because, you know, in the modern day, this is one of the worst things about being a UFC fan, Semler. You don't know, the average UFC fan really believes most of them aren't on steroids, and that's only the ones who get caught are. Like, they really don't get that, like, no, that's just called figure out the odds that you fail the test, and eventually some people are going to fail. The joke is the best guys ever are just really good at cycling. Not Lance Armstrong one, obviously.
On that topic that was fascinating, and I couldn't put it down. Like, I just read it almost straight through, was The Secret Race. And it's the story of, it's Armstrong's teammate. All
I'm going to say is this, Samler.
Sure.
This is a joke. It's explicitly a joke. But in light of your current reputation about politics, be really careful about saying you read a brilliant book called The Secret Race.
Get that.
I'm glad you explained that, at least. I'm glad there was some more coming after that.
I gotta add that really quickly, you know, just like this is about cycling, everybody.
There you go. Okay.
Competitive racing. Yes. Dude, that was that got it moment. Did you see that clip pop up where the guy's just like, it's like some Asian guy asking an old white guy, like, so what's your favorite race? And the guy's just like, I don't have any particular one. And the guy's like deadpan, you know, it's like, well, I'm a big fan of the Daytona 500. You know,
there you go. It was a bit
there you go.
There you go. Exactly.
He's now trapped. Yeah. He's like, well, I don't have any particular favorite one. Haha. You know, it has to go along with it because obviously it's a mega loaded question. Icarus documentary was also excellent, French. Yeah, that was a solid one. But The Secret Race, it was Inside the Hidden World. It was Tyler Hamilton, who was Armstrong's teammate. Holy shit, that book is amazing. And it's all about the doping and everything that they were doing. I mean, everybody was doping. It was all game. It was like the game within the game of what you could get away with and who you could bribe and who you could do it. It was just
man, you know, one thing that pisses me off a lot is when people who don't know anything about the sport just go, Lance Armstrong was a bitch and a coward and a cheater, right? On an absolute level, yes. But understand, all the people who turned on him did it to get immunity from their own cheating. They were all cheating. He was better at cheating and riding a bike than them. So like that story particularly is there's so much grey area in that one. People don't know. They think it's an open shut clause, but it ain't. The joke is they even had actual races where it's like the first 8 people were all like caught doping. That's happened. Like the first 8, like come on, man. So that whole topic's so dirty, isn't it? Because they make out like Lance Armstrong, you're a disgrace. Take your titles away. Then you just give them to some other guy that was doping you morons.
That's basically it. Yeah, they were like everybody said. That's why Armstrong was just straight up about where he still has the jerseys on his living room wall. Those are my jerseys.
No, I agree. By the way, that's one thing in general I have a very controversial take on, because I think the same thing in StarCraft. You know, in StarCraft Brood War, the player Savior famously got caught match fixing, and in StarCraft 2, there was another player called Life. In Korea, they are so harsh, similar. They actually memory hold those people. If you go to the OGN studio, there was an OGN that this guy won, like a Shinhan Bank OSL Season 3. It just says nobody won it. They have memory hold him Stalin style out of a fucking photo. That's mental, because you were there. You did win it. There's video evidence. Like, listen, you might not like what the guy did elsewhere, but you cannot deny his accomplishment. He did win that tournament. Like, I think that's disgraceful when they take people out of history like that. I think it's gross, mate.
Gross. It is gross, because then it's like, how far are you willing to go with that? Like, you need to push it the distance if you're going to play these kinds of games. But then no, it's just Armstrong. It turns out it was like just a political hit because he was an asshole and he pissed people off, and it just felt like, okay, he's going to be the whipping boy. It's so bizarre. Okay, next question.
There's got to already be a few left now, right?
Yeah, we got like just 3 left. RN Jesus, who would be your top 5 players at this point in the year?
Right, easy one, simple number 1. So we'll have that one. Then let me think. Who else are we going with? Because Spinks and Blame F are probably in there.
You have to have Zywoo still. Even with
I'd probably still have Zywoo if I had to guess. So there's 4. Who are we going for the 5th one? Like, here's the problem, because the players that really fuck up all the ratings, if you go and look, is Axile and Shiro always have mad numbers, but they just don't go that deep in the tournament. So the problem with them is, do they get the legitimacy? Like, if you don't always go to the final, by the way, it's also easier to get bad stats. So I'm trying to think who else. Who could the 5th player be?
Did you have Rain as 5th?
No, I don't.
You wouldn't put Rain there?
I'd probably say Stown, maybe from Heroic. Maybe Stown.
Really? But he isn't. They aren't making finals either.
No, but earlier in the year, they aren't. But there's not many people are, mate. Like, who is in finals? There's the question.
That's the thing. From FaZe, everybody's kind of like here, but like I'm thinking Rain just because he really fucking steps up in like big time matches.
No, but not over the whole year though. That's the problem. Dude, he's not even top 3 in his own team. How can he be top 5 in the world?
Sure, he is top 3 in his own team. Get out of here.
No way. The top 3 in that team is fucking in this order. Like, the problem is it's not Rops at the moment. It should be. It's actually probably Brokey, Twists, and fucking Rops if I had to guess the order. Like, it's not Rain, no way.
Yeah.
Rain, but the problem with Rain is he had 2 of the biggest hunts of the year he stepped up.
He hasn't been like taking over, you know what I mean?
No, he hasn't had to be in that team, but yeah, he hasn't really stepped up.
Rain above Rops right now as it stands. That may change.
In fact, you know what? Maybe I put Twists here. Maybe Twists gets the last spot.
Twist is fucking ball. Yeah,
mainly from impact. It's more from eye test than raw stats. Like, he's just had a bunch of it. Maybe I go Twist as my 5th. There you go. So I've got Simple, Spinks, Blame FC, Woos, Twists. You can decide the order.
I like it. Let's see. Zumba. Tough question. Favorite hamburger fillings?
Go on then. You're
Bacon,
the American.
Jalapenos. I gotta have some spice, man. Gotta have some spice. Like, that's basically like, if I can have bacon and jalapenos on all burgers, I'm good with the rest. Like cheese, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, fine. Give or take. But like bacon and jalapenos, I'm pretty straightforward.
I'll tell you something weird. When I was a boy growing up, when we used to make burgers in England, because it was traditionally like you're doing a home burger here, one thing we never did that I've noticed all the really good burger chains do is we never put mayonnaise on it. We never put any mayonnaise on the burger, whereas I've noticed mayonnaise should by default be on most burgers. And then if you want ketchup as well, you put some of that on. Because the other thing is, when I was a boy, all you do with the burgers is you just put loads of ketchup on. Whereas I actually noticed in the modern day, like, you have that burger sauce in America as well, which is kind of like a mix of like fucking ketchup with something else, like mustard or something.
Sauce and shit like that too.
Because I'm a fan of that one, like with the dill pickle in, where it's that burger sauce, like that's pretty good.
Dude,
pickles in general, I'm a fan of. I like pickles, taste quite nice in burger, I think.
In-N-Out sauce, like the In-N-Out secret sauce, whatever that is on a burger. Yeah, that's pretty solid. Like a good In-N-Out burger. Now that I think about it, dude, it's been years since I had an In-N-Out burger. I could go for an In-N-Out burger right about now. Damn.
I'm more of a Five Guys type guy, but you know,
fair enough.
That's how I do it.
On everything. All right, what do we got here? Archives of Justinian. I was a bit unclear on my last question. What current players would you want to see in a show match on the pre-op nerf patch? We're
not doing this again. We're not doing this again. Who gives a fuck, mate? It's not. I'm sorry, we gave this like 10 minutes last time. It wasn't that interesting. Like, we tried. It's not that interesting. He basically just means who hasn't played with. Which AWPers haven't played with the pre-op nerf? So let's just do the St. Paul's Eve. Yeah, there we did it. There you go. See, Shiro. There you go. I've done it for you. The next question.
Last one's a good one. What's your favorite cut of beef from Kozia?
Now, this is easy for me. And the reason why is because, look, I am obviously fat right now, so I'm not claiming right now I do this diet. But typically in my life, I actually like to do the keto diet. So when I eat a keto diet, I want the cut that has the most fat. So I normally go with ribeye.
There you go. Yeah, I go for tomahawks, which is basically a ribeye with a
giant one. Yeah, on the board. Yeah, exactly.
With a handle. You know, that's why they're awesome, is that they come with a handle, so you can literally just eat the steak off of the bone. It's fucking awesome. And it's just, you're right. Lots of fat, lots of flavor, tender. You cook it right. It's just the best fucking cut of meat ever. I could eat that every day and never get bored. It's just the
absolutely. Best. I literally do sometimes. Yeah.
So good. So good. So yeah, easy peasy. Well, that's a show.
I even had that, by the way, at the gym one time. I had a guy who was like a trainer, and he was like, so tell me like your diet. Like, what are you eating? I was like, probably like ribeye, steak, something. He's like, no, I mean like every day. I was like, yeah, ribeye, steak. Like, and he was like, every day. I was like, isn't that expensive? And I was like, I got money. So. Got money, I'm not. So what do you want? It's not my fault I was born like this, mate. Someone had to be successful. May as well be me.
Like the mail-in, like I watched an ad the other day where it's like this guy's just like, oh, you know, and they do the mail-in, you know, because now you can do the mail-in butcher stuff like that, where you get your meat mailed to you, and it's like, yeah, okay, great, and he's just like, yeah, you'll never be out of steak or whatever. I'm just like, dude, that shit's expensive. Ordering the meat, getting it delivered to you, like that shit's fucking expensive. Holy shit! Like, okay, if you have the money to do it, fucking hey, awesome. But it's like, Not everybody's going to be able to do that. You can't just act like everybody's going to have the money to go down that path.
Sure.
You know, like most of the time you're going to be cutting corners, but that is a flex. Yeah. You're just like, oh yeah, of course we buy every day. Yeah. Don't you do that? You know, you're here training. You would want. All right. Well, that's going to be a show, my dude. Once again, thanks so much for being here. Okay. And also, yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks for the support. Be sure to hit follow on Twitch, follow on YouTube. Hit if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to leave us a thumbs up and a comment. That always helps with the algo gods. If you're listening on Spotify and iTunes, now we're there as well. So be sure to leave a review there, leave the stars, leave the thumbs up, leave a comment. Even if it's one word, it helps. It's really sick. It gets that algo working, and more people get to listen to us rant and rave. But Thorn, dude, thanks so much, man. Always a good time. And I guess we'll catch up next week after the blast groups have played out, or at least partway through. We'll get to at least look at what we predicted this time around, and we'll get to talk a bit about that. So we'll see you guys next week with the next episode. Peace.
Chris is still in the picture. Oh, still very much in the round.